Chapter 1528. Wang Ling had thought that as long as he didn't move, the incomplete version of the talisman wouldn't be consumed. In the end, it turned out that he had paid the wrong price. This was because the incomplete version of the talisman also had the effect of suppressing the backlash. In other words, even if he stood still, the talisman would still be worn out due to the effect of suppressing the backlash. Under Lanlan Road's repeated attacks, an incomplete version of the Dao talisman on Wang Ling's person was already starting to smoke. He felt that he could no longer hesitate like this. If he defeated his opponent earlier, he might be able to reduce the consumption of these one-off incomplete version talismans. Hence, in the next second, Wang Ling's figure directly disappeared in front of Lanlan Road. His figure was like a ghost, and Lanlan Lu couldn't see his movements at all. This is the second gear. Lanlan Lu was shocked. At the same time, he began to reflect on his arrogant behavior. In the end, he was still too confident. Looking down on Wang Ling had led to today's situation. Lanlan Lu was frightened by Wang Ling's aura, and at the same time, he was stunned by the young man's incomparably elegant posture. Compared to his previous series of flashy attacks, Wang Ling's attack wasn't the slightest bit fancy. It was simple and calm, yet it revealed a faint sense of elegance. Wasn't this the feeling he had been pursuing all this time? In his daze, the blue-haired man felt his heartbeat quicken. The moment Wang Ling's one finger then hit the back of his neck, Lanlan Lu closed his eyes. "Please be gentle with me," Queen Lang sang. At the same time, the image in the waiting room was interrupted and turned into a snowflake. Wang Ming had done this deliberately. When the scene returned, Lanlan Lu was lying on the ground with a calm and blissful expression, looking as if he was having a sweet dream. The referee announces the final result. Queen Lang victory. Although the people in the waiting room did not know what had happened, but Lanlan Road had lost to Wang Ling, which surprised many people. Like I said, Holang Sang will definitely win. He has an 80% chance of winning. Exactly. Student Peacock's strength isn't weak. In the previous duel with Student Peacock, Lanlan Lu's frantic dodging skills must have consumed a lot of his stamina. Haha. As expected of number 60 High's mascot. In the waiting room, many of the advanced contestants and the losers group contestants saw this scene and started discussing. Only Peacock's expression remained unsightly, because he knew the true situation of Lanlan Road. In the process of their duel, there was an element of acting. Therefore, there was no possibility that he had consumed a lot of stamina, as everyone thought. But in such a situation, Wang Ling still won. This made Peacock extremely frightened. His strength was unfathomable. Before leaving, Wang Ling checked Lanlan Lu's injury. That finger just now was called Sleeping Finger, and it was the one with the least destructive power among all of his moves. At the same time, the person who was knocked would immediately fall into a state of drowsiness. The effect was even stronger than the sleeping black tea. Furthermore, the moment Wang Ling had struck him with his finger, he had also healed Lanlan Lu's injury. He discovered. Actually, he couldn't really be ruthless. This was just a spar with a Chinibyu. Lanlan Lu was not an enemy. Actually, he wasn't a bad person. He just liked to play some tricks. After experiencing that battle just now, he believed that Lanlan Lu had probably grown up. So he helped Lanlan Lu recover from her injuries. This was Wang Ling's gentleness. Other people couldn't learn it, nor could they imitate it. They successfully advanced to the top 32. Next was the group showdown for the top 16. The group stage emphasized the all-round development of morality, intelligence, physique, beauty, and labor. The first round of screening was a test of body. Then the second round was a test of intelligence. So the following showdown would also change to a certain extent. The second round of testing was the secret room. This was a school sacrificial work meticulously designed by the teachers of 9 Paths and high school. Every year, some adjustments and designs would be made to the mechanism of the secret room. The whole secret room was as big as 2 football fields. Furthermore, to make it easier for the students to experience it, the design of the secret room was symmetrical. There were 8 entrances in total. That was to say, although they went in through different entrances. However, everyone experienced the same secret room level. 8 entrances could allow 8 people to enter at a time. Then, under ideal conditions, they would be able to escape in 4 attempts. The 32 contestants would be ranked in descending order according to the time it took them to successfully escape 9 paths and the secret room. The first 16 people who took the shortest time would advance. At the same time, this was to avoid people getting stuck in the secret room and wasting time. The time limit for the second round was 4 hours. Everyone had to complete the task within 4 hours. Otherwise they would be directly eliminated and enter the losers bracket. Of course, this was to ensure fairness. This time, there wouldn't be a live video feed of the cracking process inside the secret room for the other contestants to watch. Lotus Sun was actually very familiar with the secret room task. She still remembered the Heavenly Tao secret room she had cracked on Divine Tao Star back then. No matter how difficult and terrifying this 9 paths and the secret room was, could it be more complicated than the Heavenly Tao secret room? Hence, Lotus Sun was full of confidence. She wasn't worried at all. Leek Sasaki read out the rules of the second round in the central control room. Then came the Q&A session. The girl who had previously regarded Lotus Sun as a thorn in her side, Matsushita Galaxy, raised her hand and asked, "Can we break down the door by force?" Leek Sasaki smiled at this question. He didn't answer that he couldn't, and just said, "You can try." The 9 paths and the secret room weren't made of ordinary materials. The structure of the secret room inside was complex, and all the structures were made of a material that could suppress spirit energy. After entering the 9 paths and the secret room, a lot of people's strength would be greatly limited. It was almost impossible for cultivators below the nascent soul stage to break down the door by force. Leek Sasaki smiled as he reminded them. Also, if you use spells like going through walls, you'll be directly judged as cheating and disqualified from advancing. So, I hope everyone will behave themselves and don't think of any dishonest ways. After saying this, Leek Sasaki looked at the time. It was now 20:04 in the evening. If the next few rounds of the competition went smoothly, before noon tomorrow 9 paths and the high school would be able to submit a list of the top 5. Right after that, according to the results of the system's draw, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had both been selected in the first round. "Lang-san, I'll be waiting for you at the exit." Lotus Sun secretly sent Wang Ling a telepathic message and took the lead in. Wang Ling grunted softly. Then he also pulled open the curtain. He stepped into the pitch-black passageway. At the same time, Wang Ling was pondering a strategy to quickly clear the stage. It was just a secret room. How hard could it be? Just dismantle it and be done with it. In fact, until the moment Wang Ling stepped in, no one realized how serious the problem was. Many people thought that this Lang-san was a little puppy, but in fact sometimes he was also a husky. Chapter 1529. This was a zombie-themed replica of a secret room. After Wang Ling entered, pitch-black darkness instantly descended. The first secret room was a warehouse full of junk, and the iron door was wrapped in a thick iron lock. The chain was very thick and 5 centimeters long, and it looked like a python that locked the iron door. Wang Ling noticed a blood-stained beach chair 10 meters away from the iron door. There was a bloody shirt hanging from it, and Wang Ling could see the glint of metal inside it. It was a key. It was probably a prop that led to the next secret room. Generally speaking, one only needed to use the object attraction spell to easily hook the key. However, there was a spirit energy restriction in the secret room, and it would be very difficult for other people to accurately locate such a small object at a distance of 10 meters. Thus, Wang Ling judged that he had to combine the props in the warehouse for this round. He had to combine the props into a long hook and hook the beach chair in front of him. But that would be too troublesome. In a situation where no one could cast spells normally, Wang Ling casting spells would be very abrupt. Even if the spirit energy restriction in the secret room didn't work on him, he still couldn't do it. Thus, without hesitation, Wang Ling directly grabbed the thick chain, and with a paw sound he broke it. It didn't take much effort. Everything was so easy and natural. In the central control room. Watching this, Leek Sasaki broke out in a cold sweat. He could almost imagine the looks on the faces of the props team's teachers. "Leek Sasaki, is Wang Lang-sang really that strong?" Wang Ming casually lied. "He's not that strong. He's just born with strange strength." Leek Sasaki, But that's outrageous. Such a thick chain. And it's made of fine iron. It's clearly so thick. Why does it look like he's pulling noodles when he pulls it? I don't know. It could also be a quality problem. Wang Ming continued to help Wang Ling smooth things over. In any case, he and Leek Sasaki were the only ones watching this scene. As long as Wang Ling could keep Leek Sasaki in check, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. In fact, Wang Ming was also smiling bitterly in his heart. As soon as the closed-door competition was held, Wang Ling started to let loose. With no one recording or watching the match, and in a completely enclosed environment, Wang Ling's actions could be directly described as doing whatever he wanted. He took the key hanging on the bloody shirt of the beach chair outside the iron pole. Using the power of the king's eye, he found the secret door to the second secret room. And he was convinced. It was indeed opened by the key in his hand. Wang Ling had never been a violent person. Destroying other people's items was actually very immoral. So his plan was that if he could find the key, it would be better to use it to open the door. As for dismantling the door, that was an act of helplessness. As someone who was labeled a little puppy, in the eyes of outsiders, Wang Ling was actually very concerned about his image as an idol. Holding the key, he walked over. He inserted the key into the keyhole of the secret door and turned it. Then he heard another paw sound. The key broke in the keyhole just like that. Wang Ling felt helpless at the situation in front of him. He really didn't do it on purpose. But given the current situation, it was clear that he wouldn't be able to open the door with the key. Wang Ling didn't know what to do, and could only use a little strength. He gave the door in front of him a light kick. On the other side, the other people were all concerned about the same thing as Wang Ling. The symmetrical design of the secret room ensured that everything was fair. I wonder how classmate Wang Ling is doing. Lotus Sun was actually a little concerned about Wang Ling's situation. Furthermore, these days, she found that Wang Ling's face kept popping up in her head from time to time. In her dream last night, Wang Ling had continuously turned her around, and every time she thought about it, she couldn't help blushing. How did the saying go? Although it was just a dream, waking up was still very moving. Lotus Sun felt that no one could understand her feelings at that moment. Let's hurry up and clear the game. Taking a deep breath, she began to observe the environment of the first secret room. After learning that this was a warehouse with messy junk, she just intuitively knew. Most of the things in this warehouse were actually used to confuse people and weren't real clues. Clues in a normal secret room wouldn't be so complicated. It was very clear. Thus, the food and drinks piled up on the shelves in the warehouse were all useless. Then, the girl's gaze fell on the only iron door she could see. Her train of thought was surprisingly similar to Wang Ling's. Lotus Sun quickly fixed her gaze on the blood-soaked clothes. The key is there, isn't it? She stared in the direction of the beach chairs. At a distance of 10 meters, coupled with the restriction of spirit energy, it was indeed very difficult to accurately lock onto a target with the object guide spell. Although Lotus Sun now had Mysterious Sea's strength to support her, she was currently playing the role of Ryoko Q. However, she was currently playing the role of Ryoko Kwamiya. If Mysterious Sea's aura was released, it would inevitably cause suspicion. But Lotus Sun had already thought of a suitable solution. She took out the prop that she had prepared in advance. It was a prop that was exactly the same as the copy of the ghost record. It looked exactly the same, but it was an imitation and didn't have any effect on the ghost manual. At that moment, the girl imitated Ryoko Q and opened the ghost manual. A burst of light emitted from the manual. In fact, it was the LED light effect that came with the prop. Since they were putting on a show, they had to go all the way. This kind of process was essential. Then, in the central control room, Leek Sasaki saw the bloody clothes on the beach chairs actually float up on their own and fly to Lotus Sun's side. This is... He rubbed his eyes, feeling as if he was hallucinating. The moment the bloody clothes had floated over, it had seemed like he had seen the figure of a female ghost. In order for Rong-chan to pretend to be her, classmate Ryoko even taught Rong-chan how to use the ghost manual. Leek Sasaki found it inconceivable. The ghost manual was the most important ancestral magic weapon in the Ryoko family. Could this kind of method be taught to outsiders? Wang Ming nodded noncommittally, a meaningful expression on his face. In fact, the female ghost figure that Leek Sasaki had seen wasn't a real female ghost. It was Sun Yinger. This time, Wang Ming really couldn't help laughing in his heart. His younger brother and sister-in-law were really naughty. At that moment, Lotus Sun had successfully obtained the key. Then, she swiftly discovered the secret door hidden behind the shelves in the warehouse. Behind the secret door was a long, dimly lit passage. When the secret door opened, Lotus Sun discovered a familiar figure standing in the passage leading to the next secret room. Under the dim light, the figure looked at her with a slightly sinister expression. Classmate Sparrow? Lotus Sun was startled. And in the next moment, the sparrow in front of her had taken out a bloodied Dr. Skullcracker hammer from somewhere and charged at her. Lotus Sun, I want you dead, the sparrow roared crazily. Chapter 1530. How could a sparrow? Chive Sasaki looked at the image in the central control room, his eyes filled with horror. He suddenly remembered that as the vice president of the student union, Sparrow had actually participated in the interior design of the secret chamber. Although the 9 passageways and the secret rooms were symmetrical in design, in fact, in order to make it convenient for the staff to go to each secret room to repair the props, in fact, there were also secret doors that only the staff knew about. These doors could be unlocked using facial recognition technology. Given that the sparrow was familiar with the map of the secret chamber, it wasn't difficult for her to quickly find Lotus Sun's position. You have to stop. In a moment of desperation, Leek Sasaki had already activated the call button in the central control room, intending to report the sudden situation and temporarily stop the secret room challenge. In the end, Wang Ming directly used his brain waves to turn off the call button, with an indifferent expression on his face. Little Erzong. There was some doubt in Chive Sasaki's eyes. Wang Ming said helplessly, "Don't worry, Chives. We'll just watch the show." But didn't Sparrow classmate turn into a ghost very seriously? What Chive Sasaki knew wasn't complete. If she had known their true strength, she probably wouldn't have been so shocked. But it wasn't convenient for Wang Ming to talk about these things in detail at the moment. Lotus Sun had spent so long to enter the core of the war sect. How long had it been since Leek Saki made his debut? How could he suddenly have a showdown with Leek Saki? What Wang Ming knew now was already the limit of what Wang Ming could give him. Although he didn't quite understand Wang Ming's attitude, but Leek Sasaki always felt that little Erzong, Rongchan and Bak Langsang, these 3 people from number 60 high didn't seem to be ordinary people. Sometimes there was no need to understand things that one shouldn't know. All he had to do was play dumb. Thus Chikisaki covered his eyes. At the same time, he covered his ears. "What are you doing?" Wang Ming asked. "See no evil, hear no evil." Leek Sasaki replied. In fact, he could still hear it. Wang Ming smiled. Chive Sasaki looked silly, but to be able to sit in the position of the student council president in such a complicated environment like Kyushu, he had to have some skills. Indeed, there was some wisdom in it. Wang Ming knew that Leek Sasaki's current wish was to become an official in the Grey Church. Judging from his performance so far, this little guy really had a bright future. On the other side, the Sparrow's drama continued. Kill Lotus Sun. Kill Lotus Sun. Sparrow held the hammer, and it felt like there were 10,000 bullets flying through her mind. And that sentence kept echoing in her mind. There was clearly something wrong with her condition. She was physically and mentally haggard, her eyes were lifeless, and her cheeks were deeply sunken. His entire body was emitting a black aura. Lotus Sun knew very well that Sparrow was the first cultivator to be used by Chiba Chiohu as a ghost. And from the current situation, it wasn't hard to determine that Sparrow had been affected by the ghost in her body. As Akano Takeshu's first test subject, it was impossible for the ghost in his body to be in a state of balance under a contract like the 9 Palaces Starlight. Once he lost control of his mind, it was very likely that he would be devoured by the ghost in his body. The moment the hammer struck, many thoughts flashed through Lotus Sun's mind. However, she didn't release mysterious C's sword energy to directly counterattack. Instead, she used the passive ability of being one with the sword to enhance her 6 senses. The instant her perception was amplified, Lotus Sun could clearly sense that Sparrow's movements seemed to have become much slower. The power of being one with the sword brought about an extremely powerful perceptual amplification. This was especially true when it came to capturing dynamic vision. Sparrow's movements seemed crazy and precise, but in Lotus Sun's eyes, it was like a slow-motion video. She easily jumped back to the side. There was a boom. The hammer smashed heavily into the wall of the secret room. The wall instantly collapsed, and a lot of dust fell off. Classmate Six-Eyed Akako, wake up! Lotus Sun tried to call out Sparrow's real name, in an attempt to awaken her own will. She knew that Sparrow couldn't be blamed for this situation. In essence, Sparrow was also a victim. After dodging several attacks in a row, Sparrow held the hammer and smashed several places. At this moment, Sun Yinger, who had been hiding in the dark and observing, finally couldn't help but speak up. Rongrong, we can't go on like this. This secret room is about to be smashed to pieces. If we're forced to stop, we might be implicated. I think it's better to knock her out. Lotus Sun frowned. She actually hadn't thought of a better way to deal with this. There's no other way, classmate Six-Eyed Akako. Sorry for the offense, Lotus Sun said softly, and was just about to step forward to temporarily knock out Sparrow as Sun Yinger had suggested. At that moment, there was suddenly the sound of a wall shattering in the air. It sounded like something was flying toward them from afar. Boom! An iron door broke through the air. It was the iron door that Wang Ling had kicked earlier. It broke through the wall from the side with great precision, and like a nail, it directly rammed into Sparrow's waist and nailed her to the wall. It's classmate Wang Ling. Lotus Sun reacted almost immediately. Only Wang Ling could have such monstrous strength. He had clearly already been sealed multiple times. But Wang Ling still showed his extraordinary strength. Classmate Wang Ling must have predicted that I would be in danger. The strength of this kick is too precise. Lotus Sun exclaimed in her heart. She hadn't expected that just as she was hesitating, Wang Ling would step in to help her. Wang Ling. Actually, Wang Ling hadn't expected that his kick would actually land on Lotus Sun by accident. He had clearly kicked very lightly, and had really only used a little bit of strength. But that kick just now had actually given him a limit. At the very least, it had let him know that the next time he punched or kicked, he definitely couldn't exceed that limit. Otherwise he would definitely die. Pinned to the wall by the door, Sparrow lost consciousness almost instantly. The black chi on her body dissipated. Lotus Sun knew that Sparrow should have calmed down by now. Before she left, she released a healing sword chi on the Sparrow, which had a slow healing effect. Classmate Sparrow, I'm sorry, I can't stay here any longer. Take care. After saying that, Lotus Sun hurried into the next secret room. Because the scene just now had been too chaotic, there was no trace of the key they had found earlier. Without saying a word, Lotus Sun directly drew her sword and hacked open the door to the second secret room. Oh! Sun Yinger dropped her forehead into her hand. In the end, she had still hacked open the door. If the prop team had seen such a messy scene, they would definitely have cried. Rongrong, we've wasted too much time. Sun Yinger reminded her. I know. Lotus Sun nodded. Now wasn't the time to play the secret room game. She had agreed to meet Wang Ling at the final destination. So she had to clear the 9 paths and the secret rooms. What do you want to do? Sun Yinger asked. Lotus Sun smiled embarrassedly. Of course, continue hacking open the door. In any case, I've already hacked open one room. Hacking a few more won't hurt. Sun Yinger. She understood the logic. But was this how secret rooms were supposed to be played? Chapter 1531. Not long after the girl left, the Sparrow gradually came back to her senses. She pried open the door on her body. A kind of warm and refreshing spiritual energy instantly surged into the Sparrow's heart. Sure enough, everything was as she had guessed. The Kimiya Ryoko in front of her was indeed Lotus Sunday. Although she didn't know what was going on with the iron door that had suddenly come from beyond the heavens. But she was still astonished by Lotus Sun's choice. Ever since she had been used by that cruel and unscrupulous person, Chie Chiuhu, she had often felt that her mind was in a state of separation. She also knew that sometimes her mentality would suddenly change and become very abnormal. Because of her fusion with the ghost, She began to become indifferent, cold-blooded, and even dark. She would choose to get rid of those unclean things in her eyes without mercy. But now Mysterious Sea's healing sword chi had restored the sparrow's mental state to a state of calmness that had never been there before. At the same time, the idea of trying to expose Lotus Sun for pretending to be Kiyomiya Ryoko disappeared in her heart. She wasn't sure what was wrong with her. She just felt that her whole body had become warm. She clearly knew that doing so would expose her identity, but she still chose to use the healing effect of the sword chi to save herself. Why, the sparrow couldn't help but shed 2 streams of tears. In her memory, it seemed that she hadn't cried like this for a long time. These were tears that came from the bottom of her heart. This was the effect of Mysterious Sea's healing sword chi. In addition to healing injuries, it could also stabilize the spirit and purify all the evil chi in the body. Lotus Sun didn't know how strong her healing sword chi was, because she had only used a trace of power. But what she didn't know was that even a trace of power was enough to save this little bird with broken wings who was about to fall into the abyss forever. The current Mysterious Sea had fused with the 5 cores of the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube. Even if it was just a trace of power, could the mere evil spirit in her body actually resist it? Even if it was a 100% fusion ghost, it could still be uprooted by Mysterious Sea's power. And when the ghost in the sparrow's body was released along with wisps of black chi, she felt her whole body relax. It was as if a huge stone that had been pressing down on her had been removed, making her whole body happy. Lotus Sun. At this moment, the sparrow was deeply moved. All these years she had been alone, facing the pain of being forced to become a ghost. She had never thought about it. There was actually a person who became her light at the critical moment. He shone into the bottomless abyss in the depths of her heart, and completely shattered the world that was engulfed by darkness. When she came back to her senses, a figure was walking towards her. The man was holding a flashlight. He had come from the inner passage that only the builders of the secret chamber knew about. Sparrow recognized the identity of the person who had come, and her expression was one of shock. Teacher Zhou? The newcomer's name was Zhou Xiang, a Huaxiao national who was currently employed as a language teacher at Sun Island's Jiudaohe High School. Zhou Xiang saw the battered and exhausted sparrow and the mottled bloodstains on the ground. He hurriedly went up to her and asked, "What happened?" "They were all injured." "Ah. My secret chamber. It took me a long time to finish painting this wall." "I'm sorry, Teacher Zhou." The sparrow apologized, her face full of self-blame. Such a reaction undoubtedly stunned Zhou Xiang. As far as he knew, sparrows didn't walk this path. Then, she suddenly raised her head and blinked as she looked at the young man in front of her with a slightly beseeching expression. "Teacher Zhou, can I ask you to help me keep this a secret?" Zhou Xiang was startled. He was very angry that his secret chamber had become so messy. But who could refuse a female student's request? He shrugged helplessly. "All right. I won't argue. But you have to help fix it. We have to hurry up and fix it. There are still several batches of students coming up for the test." "Okay." Sparrow nodded. "What should I do?" "For the time being, there's no way to fix the iron door. Replace it with hardwood and disposable spray paint. This is the fastest and most economical way to prevent anyone from damaging it again," said Zhou Xiang. "No problem, teacher." Sparrow nodded. "Classmate Sparrow, I have a question." At that moment, Zhou Xiang frowned. "What is it, Teacher Zhou?" Zhou Xiang actually wanted to ask Sparrow, what on earth was wrong? Why did it suddenly seem like she had become a different person? But in the end he didn't say it. At that moment Sparrow smiled at him. "Also, Teacher Zhou, my name isn't Sparrow, it's Six-Eyed Scarlet Rice." "My bad, classmate Scarlet Rice." Zhou Xiang also smiled. Although he didn't know what on earth had happened to Sparrow, at the very least, the girl in front of him seemed a lot cuter than before. In the central control room, Wang Ming also had a curious expression on his face when he saw Zhou Xiang, who was in charge of the repair work. "Little Leek, is this person reliable?" "Don't worry, little brother Air, he has the best temper among the teachers I know, and is also the closest to me." Leek Sasaki said, "Teacher Zhou Xiang's child is in the same year as us." "Oh, he's also studying in 9 Paths?" "No. Teacher Zhou only came here to work for the high salary. His child is studying in Huaxiu Nation. Which school? Sword God Academy Zhouzi. Sword God Academy? Wang Ming was very familiar with this school. After all, it had been established by General Yi. Furthermore, Yi Jiang, who had been traumatized by the beating he had received at the Nine Dragons Mountain Art Conference, was also studying at Sword God Academy. But the name Zhouzi, Wang Ming had indeed never heard of him. But to be able to study at Sword God Academy, this teacher Zhou Xiang's family background must also be extraordinary. Wang Ming pondered this in his heart. Leek Sasaki trusted this teacher Zhou Xiang a lot. But for the sake of caution, Wang Ming still noted the name down. He planned to dig up more detailed information later. Elsewhere, in the galaxy of stars devouring, Peng Shiren suddenly opened his eyes. I found him. What is he doing? Asked the grave god. A boring game in a secret room. But it's a good opportunity to quietly wipe him out. Peng Shiren had already thought of a way to use the secret room to quietly wipe him out. Are you sure you want to do it in such a hurry? Don't you want to wait and see? The grave god suggested. He had a bad feeling about this. I've waited too long for this moment. Peng Shiren had already made up his mind, and didn't intend to wait any longer. He would completely kill this alien monster in front of these ordinary people, dig out his heart, and then use his intestines as a rope to hang him in this secret room. In the end, he would be completely exposed to the public. At the thought of Wang Ling's miserable death, Peng Shiren didn't feel very happy. What goes around comes around. How cruel. Classmate Wang Ling. In the next moment, his figure directly disappeared in the galaxy of stars devouring. He silently appeared on the body of one of the contestants in the secret room. Wang Ling, I'm here to kill you, Peng Shiren sneered. Chapter 1532. Peng Shi was no stranger to the hidden room escape game. When he was young, Dao ancestor Wang had trapped him in the secret chamber of the heavenly Dao. The difficulty was far greater than the man-made mechanisms here. Peng Shi felt extremely melancholic as he stood there. When he saw the object, he began to think of his master. He actually began to miss his missing master. Before Dao ancestor Wang stepped into the cycle of reincarnation, he didn't leave a single word for him, as if he was purposely severing their relationship as master and disciple. He left decisively, cleanly, and efficiently. He didn't leave any leeway for him. There wasn't even the slightest clue. After Dao ancestor Wang entered samsara, Peng Shiren cultivated assiduously in an attempt to find where Dao ancestor Wang was after samsara. Unfortunately, he failed. The man seemed to have evaporated into thin air, as if he had become a speck of dust in the universe. After that, Peng Shiren came to a conclusion that he didn't dare to believe, but he had to believe it. That was his master, Dao ancestor Wang. They did not survive the samsara tribulations and died in the samsara, even though the probability of that happening was very small. However, Peng Shiren felt that it was something that had a certain probability of happening. In fact, he had also previously suspected that Wang Ling's true identity was Dao ancestor Wang. However, this answer was completely dispelled, because Wang Ling's dharma was completely different from Dao ancestor Wang's. Even if a person entered the cycle of reincarnation, his dharma would not change. There was one more thing. If Wang Ling was Dao ancestor Wang, there was no way he would be so ruthless and try to kill him. Peng Shiren had never forgotten how well Dao ancestor Wang had treated him. But now, the only person who was good to him in this world was gone. In that case, this world. What was the need for it to exist? Over the years, every time Peng Shiren thought about this, the desire to reshape the cultivation world and overturn the entire universe grew stronger. And now, he was only one step away from realizing this grand plan. The last person standing in front of him. It was Wang Ling. Therefore Wang Ling must die. After possessing a contestant's body, the information in his mind instantly synchronized. He possessed a female contestant's body. This person's name was Matsushita Galaxy. This was not the first time Peng Shiren had possessed a woman's body. Therefore, he did not feel that there was anything that he was not used to. Once, he had possessed a female cultivator for fun. Then he used his own body as a tool. After experiencing it once, it was a different feeling. But that was a long time ago. After possessing Matsushita Galaxy, the first thing Peng Shiren did was to relocate Wang Ling's position. This was not a difficult task. However, considering that fighting here would cause a huge commotion, he preferred to use a stealthy method to deal with Wang Ling. Then, in an extremely cruel way, his corpse was displayed in reality. Peng Shiren was prepared for this. He took out a jade box. Inside was a pair of snow-white eyes. This could be considered a gift that Dao ancestor Wang left for Peng Shiren. Peng Shiren found it in the residence outside the King Dao ancestor heavenly tomb. His master had a magical treasure called Eyeball Collector. He had collected all kinds of strange and powerful eyes in this world. They were of different colors and were mounted in all kinds of boxes. Every pair contained immense power. For big shots in the cultivation world, replacing cosmetic eyes was as easy as lifting a finger. But the act of gouging out eyeballs was still very dangerous in itself. Children who hadn't reached the soul formation stage or above shouldn't easily imitate it. Since his loss to Wang Ling last time, Peng Shiren had been trying to figure out how he had lost. During the time he had been isolated in star devouring. In the end, he had realized that he might have lost to Wang Ling's eyes. Thus, Peng Shiren quickly thought of the relics that Dao ancestor Wang had left behind that hadn't been sealed in the heavenly tomb. For example, the eyeball collector, in his hands now. This pair of snow-white eyes was called Li Shi. They were the kind of eyes that could instantly drag a person into an imaginary world. The radiation they emitted was extremely strong. He was sure that in his weakened state, even if Wang Ling sensed something, it would be hard for him to break free from the Li Shi. Peng Shiren leisurely poked out his two eyeballs and gently rolled them like walnuts. His eyes then turned into star sand and disappeared into the starry space. The environment here wasn't the universe, but as the son of the stars, Peng Shiren's control over the power of the stars was still very strong. After changing into the snow-white Li Shi, Peng Shiren looked a little terrifying. In the pitch-black darkness, the snow-white eyes reflected a chilling light. Wang Ling. It was just a soft call. The snow-white ripples spread out from the pupils with Peng Shiren as the center. The Li Shi would automatically lock onto a target based on their obsession and drag them into the inner world it had created. The truth was that Peng Shiren had helped Wang Ling with this step. Because the moment Peng Shiren had possessed Songxia Xinghe, he had already sensed Peng Shiren's existence. He was also worried that if Peng Shiren chose to directly attack him, the whole of Sun Island and even the whole world might be affected by their fight. But now, Peng Shiren had dragged him into the inner world. Instead, it had helped Wang Ling. He couldn't help feeling a little happy that he had been given a pillow just when he was feeling sleepy. He heaved a sigh of relief. He completely relaxed his mind and imagined himself as a fish floating on the surface of the sea. He let the ripples emitted by the Li Shi suck him into the inner world. Great! Done. On the other side, Peng Shiren was overjoyed. The capture of the Li Shi had been smoother than he had imagined. The youngster in front of him was quietly sucked in. Then, it was his turn to take the stage. Because this was the inner world, the surroundings looked no different from reality, but were in fact already an imaginary internal space. Apart from the person who had been dragged into the inner world, no matter how loud the commotion was, no one would sense it. After using a spell to analyze the structure of the entire secret room, Peng Shiren followed Wang Ling's position and groped his way forward step by step. All of this happened in just over 10 seconds. Wang Ling's aura was very close. At that moment, he was only one wall away from the secret room Wang Ling was in. Wang Ling, you lose. Peng Shiren laughed to himself. His entire body instantly turned invisible as he merged with the wall. And like a ghost, half of his body suddenly emerged from the wall. But what Peng Shiren didn't expect was, it was as if the youngster inside the wall had already expected this, and was looking at him with those red eyes. He had only just emerged from the wall. His head had already fallen into Wang Ling's palm. It had been caught like a bowling ball. Chapter 1533. Since the last time he had parted with Peng Shiren, Wang Ling had imagined many scenarios in which they would meet again. He didn't expect that she would take the initiative to send herself to him. The moment he grabbed Peng Shiren's head, he didn't directly make a move. The reason for that was because the head in his hand was not Peng Shiren's. He had attached himself to the body of Matsushita Galaxy's lady, and was extremely cunning. Peng Shiren was shocked that Wang Ling had noticed him, and had even grabbed his head the moment his body had come out of the shadows. Fortunately, he had already anticipated such a terrible situation. That was why he chose to possess the contestants. And now, as he held Matsushita Galaxy's head, he indeed didn't dare make a move. Wang Ling, if you have the ability, do it. Peng Shiren's voice rang out from Matsushita Galaxy's body. Both he and Wang Ling were well aware of what would happen if this head was crushed. The young man before him had incredible means, so it was naturally not difficult for him to revive a person. Even if his head was crushed, he only needed to shake his finger. Matsushita Galaxy's body and soul would be rapidly reconstructed. In fact, Peng Shiren could do that as well. It was precisely because Peng Shi was well aware of Wang Ling's power that he had set up this trap. Even if Wang Ling had the ability to resurrect Matsushita Galaxy, would the resurrected Matsushita Galaxy still be the same Matsushita Galaxy? There was a question mark on this point. This girl's soul is my hostage. Peng Shiren smiled. He was sure that Wang Ling wouldn't dare make a move. He had set Wang Ling up in reverse. Thus, the moment Wang Ling's hand grabbed his head, Peng Shiren was astonished, but he never showed any fear. Wang Ling, you've already lost completely. You don't dare to crush this girl's head, do you? Her soul was imprisoned by me. And the new soul that I reconstructed isn't her original soul. There's no point in resurrecting her like this. Oh. Hearing this, Wang Ling was silent. Peng Shiren seemed to have calculated everything thoroughly. However, he had missed one point. That was, in fact, there was no hostage in this universe that Wang Ling couldn't save. Buzz. The next moment, Wang Ling opened his eyes. The king's eye had been activated. He met Peng Shiren's gaze. 10,000 years passed in a single glance. It was as if he was at the center of the universe. Countless stars connected with each other, instantly extending to an extremely far distance. Like an immeasurable radar wave, Wang Ling instantly captured the location of Matsushita Galaxy's soul. Since he had found the location, as long as he could save her, he wouldn't have to worry about the girl's soul being replaced after her resurrection. On the other side, Matsushita Galaxy, who was imprisoned in a sealed space by Peng Shiren, had no idea what was going on. She was clearly adventuring in the secret room, but the scene in front of her suddenly changed, and she appeared in a multicolored aurora world. What she saw was a beautiful cherry blossom forest, and there seemed to be a mysterious person playing the zither in the forest. The melodious sound of the zither echoed in the forest, making people yearn for it. Once upon a time, Matsushita Galaxy had yearned for the scene of him strolling in the cherry blossom forest with his lover countless times. She likes cherry blossoms. He felt that if he were to be buried here after he died, it would be a very romantic thing. This was the soul space that Peng Shiren had customized for Matsushita Galaxy. Everything in this space was formed according to Matsushita Star River's needs. To the young girl, this was like heaven. Here she could forget everything. She would gradually forget what she was doing and why she had come here. In the end, she would even forget herself. In the beautiful cherry blossom forest, the falling pink petals carried a faint fragrance as they landed on Matsushita Galaxy's shoulders and hair. Every part of her was so beautiful that she could directly take a picture of it and use it as a wallpaper collection. Matsushita Galaxy felt so happy. She didn't know why she had come here, but she had already thought that she might as well stay here for the rest of her life. This could be considered another one of Peng Shiren's tricks. As long as the soul had the thought of abandoning its body, it would be completely independent. Even if he had the ability to search, it would be very difficult to find Matsushita Galaxy. However, Peng Shiren had miscalculated. After activating the king's eye, he had searched Matsushita Galaxy too quickly. It was so fast that he couldn't describe it in words. Just as Matsushita Galaxy was about to lose herself completely, a gentle hand fell on Matsushita Galaxy's shoulder. Who is it? Standing in the cherry blossom forest, the girl whose eyes had been gradually losing focus suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at the fair-skinned youngster who had suddenly appeared behind her. She was instantly deeply attracted to the youngster's face, and then she started to blush. Ho Langsang, How could you? It had to be a dream. Matsushita Galaxy blushed endlessly. She almost instantly remembered who she was and what she had been doing just now. That was right. She had clearly been trying to break through the secret room earlier. How had she suddenly barged into this beautiful cherry blossom forest? And she had seen Ho Langsang at that moment. Ho Langsang's hand touched her shoulder, and the warmth of her fingertips made Matsushita Galaxy's imagination run wild. It wasn't that Wang Ling had done it on purpose. He had only touched her to speed up Matsushita Galaxy's recovery of her memories from the world of the living. This was what it meant to fix up the things in the world of the living. As for the cherry blossom forest here, it was all an illusion, all fake. These were things from the netherworld. Even the sound of the zither in the cherry blossom forest now was music. Fortunately, Wang Ling had appeared just in time. Matsushita Galaxy's thoughts were instantly pulled back. But it looked like this girl seemed to have misunderstood something. Wang Ling didn't want to wait until Matsushita Galaxy returned to her body and start imagining all sorts of nonsense because of this dream. He stretched out his hand again and lightly tapped Matsushita Galaxy's forehead. He had tampered with her memories. Wang Ling had successfully located Matsushita Galaxy through the king's eye. After swiftly rescuing the girl's soul, Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief. But not only did Peng Shiren not show the slightest hint of fear, he instead laughed arrogantly. Wang Ling, you've been tricked again. Do you think it's over just because you've rescued Matsushita Galaxy? You must have used up a lot of spirit energy to search the entire universe with your power of sight just now. According to Peng Shiren's calculations, because he had used his power of sight to search the entire universe for Matsushita Galaxy, Wang Ling's aura would definitely be weaker than before. But at that moment there was the piercing sound of steam, like that of boiling water. Smoke began to billow out of the teenager in front of him. Smoke rose from Wang Ling's body as the incomplete Dao Talisman seal broke. And as the smoke formed, Wang Ling could sense that a series of one-time use talismans had failed. Did I use too much force just now? Wang Ling sighed in his heart. But since these one-time use talismans had been used up, that meant his aura was 100 million points stronger than before. At that moment, Peng Shiren's forehead was finally covered in sweat, and his head was full of question marks. Chapter 1534. In just an instant, everyone in the devouring star broke out in a cold sweat. Their bodies were ice cold and their skulls were trembling. An extremely ominous premonition formed in everyone's hearts. Through the evil eye, the grave god projected the image she was seeing into the boundless darkness of the Star Eater, which was the inner world where Peng Shiren and Wang Ling were. Even though the outcome of the battle had yet to be decided. However, it was as if the grave goddess could already foresee the ending. Shiren is going to lose. I knew this was a trap. This person is not easy to deal with. Sure enough, his weak aura was all an act, the grave goddess said with a trembling voice. Without further explanation, the hearts of Chihiro, the silver-skinned human king, Jiugong Xinghui, and the other silver-skinned aliens sank at the same time. Senior, what should we do? Chie Chioku asked anxiously. The situation seemed a little awkward. This was because none of them dared to go out. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to join the battle below. Even if they joined the battle, they would only be cannon fodder. Even the simplest method of delaying the battle didn't exist. It was the kind that would send them straight to their deaths. However, under such circumstances, they knew that Peng Shiren's importance to them was self-evident. They couldn't let anything happen to Peng Shiren at this critical moment. The heavenly tomb had yet to open. Currently, only Peng Shiren knew the location of the heavenly tomb. The grave god was still waiting for the opening of the heavenly tomb to fuse with the other half of his soul that had been separated from him for many years. If Peng Shiren died at Wang Ling's hands at this time, everything would be over. His evil eyes stared at the inner world. His gaze pierced through the layers of space as he stared at the confrontation between Wang Ling and Peng Shiren from a god's perspective. Wang Ling's ears twitched as if he had sensed something. A pair of red eyes stared back. The grave goddess was so frightened that she quickly retracted her gaze. This youth was too terrifying. It was unimaginably sharp. There's no other way. In this situation, I can only do my best to save them. The grave goddess suppressed the panic on her face and said with a frown, "Senior, what do you want to do?" Akano Kumo's face twitched, and his whole body couldn't stop trembling. Every time he thought about the moment when his head was pinched by that young man's clone, he would shiver in fear. In this situation, I can't leave the mountain directly. You guys can't be counted on. Therefore, I can only think of one way. The grave god said. With Chiechihu and Silverskin Human King's realm, going there would be no different from courting death. The grave goddess knew this very well. However, although the two of them were weak, they would be of great use in the future. Now was not the time to sacrifice them. The grave god had lived for so long in the history of cultivation, and was even regarded as a devil by Tao ancestor Wang back then. It was impossible for the grave god to not have his own trump cards. In the past, the grave god had even planned several wars against the entire universe. He attempted to conquer 10 universes in order to build his ultimate cultivation universe empire. However, such plans were repeatedly discovered and crushed by Tao ancestor Wang. The legions that were prepared in the past were also destroyed by Tao ancestor Wang one by one. However, after the grave god's soul was separated and sealed, Tao ancestor Wang believed that he was no longer a threat, and did not pursue the matter further. And it was precisely because of this that the grave goddess had a chance to make a comeback. At this moment, the grave goddess closed her eyes and communicated with the things she had prepared for her conquest of the universe. Hydrogen slave, helium slave, lithium slave, beryllium slave. In his heart, she called out these familiar names one by one. Not long after, on the battlefield in the distance, several blurry figures surrounded by primordial chi were suddenly teleported from the distant universe to the inner world where Wang Ling and Peng Shiren were. They didn't have faces, and their bodies had a kind of obsidian luster. They were puppets refined from special materials. The grave god called them slaves. But in fact, they had been the most important part of the grave god's plan to conquer the universe back then. They were also known as ancient godly weapons. Unfortunately, she didn't have many of them left. Of the hundreds of millions of ancient godly weapons back then, there were now only a few hundred left. The ones she had summoned were the ones closest to Earth. But the grave god felt that they should be enough to buy some time to rescue Peng Shiren. The 4 ancient godly weapons that were closest to Earth arrived like meteorites. In an instant, there was a huge earthquake in the inner world, and all the buildings on Sun Island were destroyed in the blink of an eye. A tsunami that was dozens of meters high swept over, creating a scene that looked like the end of the world. The pitch-black humanoid ancient godly weapons were 3 meters tall. Standing in front of the human cultivators, they looked like giants. The diamond-shaped floating heads had a high-tech feel to them. It was hard to imagine that they had actually been created tens of thousands of years ago. Peng Shiren's and Wang Ling's pupils contracted at the same time. They never thought that 4 ancient godly weapons would actually descend here. This was also the first time Wang Ling had seen such strange, puppet-like life forms. When the 4 ancient godly weapons landed, they created huge waves. Peng Shiren thought that he had found a chance to escape from this inner world. However, Wang Ling grabbed him by the collar and picked him up like a little chick. Wang Ling directly pulled out Peng Shiren's soul and held it in his palm. Then he put Songxia Galaxy's soul back into his original body and sent it out of the inner world. This series of actions was very smooth and natural, as if he was replacing a SIM card or a cell phone battery. At that moment, Peng Shiren's soul was in Wang Ling's hand. For some reason, he felt like all the strength in his body had left him. He didn't know what Wang Ling had done. He just felt that his strength was draining away bit by bit. At that moment, the 4 ancient godly weapons which the grave god had sent over were his only hope. Like comets crashing into the earth, they destroyed everything on the ground. Wang Ling was glad that this was the inner world. Otherwise, who knew how many innocent people would have died because of this undeserved disaster? Boom! The next moment, a great battle broke out. The 4 ancient godly weapons charged at Wang Ling in a battle formation. As they attacked, they exploded with golden light, and their obsidian-like metal bodies gave off a dazzling golden luster. Like cannonballs, they gave off a spirit light that soared into the sky. The spirit energy was like an ocean that flooded over like a great river. Wang Ling was slightly astonished. These ancient godly weapons were actually more powerful than that old god in the divine realm. There were actually Dao gods among them. Wang Ling knew. These things were just puppets. So what realm had the master of these puppets been at back then? The atmosphere suddenly became tense. He stared at Peng Shiren and tried to get some information out of him. In the end, Peng Shiren twisted his neck and just snorted at Wang Ling. Forget it. Wang Ling gave up on asking, and directly put Peng Shiren's soul into the king's eye. Now his task was to get rid of these 4 ancient godly weapons as soon as possible. Because Wang Ling could vaguely sense that because of the sudden arrival of the ancient godly weapons, the inner world was already on the verge of collapse. Boom. The 4 ancient godly weapons attacked from 4 directions, and fists the size of small mountains smashed into various parts of Wang Ling's body with the sound of shattering glass. How terrifying. The grave god observed the battle through the eyes of one of the ancient godly weapons. The combined attack of the 4 ancient godly weapons just now was extremely accurate and aimed at vital parts. But Wang Ling wasn't hurt at all. Instead, it was their bodies that suffered from the backlash and broke apart. Is he even human? He's only 16 years old. Chiechiohu's face was unsightly. He had thought that Wang Ling was an old monster who had lived through the ages, but after waking up, he learned from the grave god that Wang Ling was indeed only 16 years old. He didn't feel good at all. How could a 16-year-old be so invincible to this extent? He wasn't the reincarnation of Dao ancestor Wang. None of this seemed to make sense. Senior, you can't let this person off. Chiechiohu's thoughts were in a mess. He felt that Wang Ling had already become his nightmare. Unless Wang Ling died, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. I know this better than you. The grave god's evil eyes were profound. He was planning to use the ancient godly weapons to wear down Wang Ling. These 4 ancient godly weapons were just the vanguard. More would arrive one after another in the distance. After the 4 ancient godly weapons suffered a backlash from Wang Ling's body, their bodies shattered. The cracks rapidly healed at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. The backlash didn't work? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows when he saw this. Sure enough, these strange life puppets weren't as simple as he had imagined. But Wang Ling didn't intend to do it himself, considering that he still had to participate in the high school competition later on. If he did anything to these ancient godly weapons here, he would quickly use up all the one-off talismans he had on him. So, Wang Ling sat on the ground with his back against the wall of the ruins. With one hand on his knee, he assumed a posture of watching a show. Sword, come. He called out softly, and a brown wooden sword abruptly appeared in the inner world. Swordmaster, what do you want me to do? Jinka didn't take human form, but appeared in the shape of a sword in front of Wang Ling. Clear the field. Wang Ling lightly stroked the blade of the sword as he gave the order. These 2 simple words instantly put immense pressure on the grave god, who was secretly observing from a distance. This wasn't his first time seeing Jinka, and he felt that this peachwood sword was a little familiar. But he couldn't figure out where this Jinka had come from. After receiving Wang Ling's order, Jinka's whole body suddenly burst with brown spirit light. Do you also want to dance? The 4 ancient godly weapons had been floating in the air. A monstrous brown spirit light was accompanied by the most powerful sword chi. It was an overwhelming force that knocked them all down from the sky. The sword pressure was earth-shattering, forming a kind of gravity that made it impossible for these ancient godly weapons to look down on them. Wang Ling was moved by Jinka's lack of caution at this critical moment. There were several times when this little guy deliberately pretended to be weak and wanted to merge with Bai Qiao. Wang Ling just pretended to turn a blind eye to these things. Fortunately, judging from Jinka's performance today, he clearly didn't intend to go easy on them. Thus, the moment Jinka received Wang Ling's order, he immediately put the 4 ancient godly weapons in their place. But this wasn't the end. The power of the King of Sword Spirits was unfathomable. Clang. Hundreds of thousands of li long, the enormous brown sword chi turned into 4 beams of light that shot into the sky like laser cannons. Because there were no outsiders in the inner world, Jinka had a lot of room to act freely. The seemingly indiscriminate attack of sword chi, In fact, it was a charge aimed at the vitals. The brown sword light attacked the heads of the 4 ancient godly weapons, hitting them squarely in the face. With their heads injured, the ancient godly weapons seemed to lose the ability to move, and collapsed to the ground on the spot. But the attack had only just begun. Jinka, with his rich combat experience, didn't hold back at all. The moment the 4 ancient divine weapons fell, an ocean-like brown sword chi covered the sky and earth, slicing the 4 ancient divine weapons apart. So decisive. The grave god's eyebrows furrowed tightly. This peachwood sword was too terrifying and decisive. Even though it had already hit the heads, it still cut the 4 ancient godly weapons up at its own pace. In the blink of an eye, his 4 ancient godly weapons had already been cut into countless tiny pieces like grains of sand, which were swept into the air by the wildly dancing sword wave. Can they be restored? Chiechiohu's eyes widened in shock. He had never seen such a meticulous dismemberment. They could actually be cut to the size of grains of sand. It was simply as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The grave god was also astonished by this scene, but in the end he just sneered. It's not over yet. In the next moment, the ancient godly weapons that had been cut to the size of grains of sand burst forth with dazzling golden light again, and spirit power soared into the sky and swept across the ground. Although there weren't many of these ancient godly weapons left, each one had been painstakingly made by the grave god, and all physical attacks were ineffective against them. They also contained sword chi, not to mention being cut to the size of grains of sand. Even if they were reduced to invisible iron sheets, as long as they had a cellular structure, they could be restored. This was the horror of ancient godly weapons. Their power came from chaos, and chaos meant infinity. Looking at the reformed ancient godly weapons, Jinka frowned deeply. This was his first time dealing with such monsters, and he had no experience at all. But he wasn't afraid at all. These were life forms that had been formed by extracting a special substance from chaos. In theory, they were products of chaos. Sword spirits were also born from chaos. Nowadays, who didn't have something to do with chaos? Since they were all born from chaos, there was nothing to be afraid of. He had been with Wang Ling for many years and had learned so much. Naturally, the things that he knew weren't limited to battle techniques. Since sword chi didn't work, Jinka knew that he had other ideas. Buzz. In the next moment, his peachwood sword hummed lightly and burst forth with even more dazzling light. 2 runes appeared on the body of the peachwood sword. Sword talismans. The grave god laughed. Do you think talismans will work if sword chi doesn't work? Although ancient godly weapons weren't completely immune to talismans, they were still 90% immune. In this world, there weren't many talismans that could be used to suppress ancient godly weapons. But in the next moment, the 2 sword talismans that had appeared on Jinka's body rushed into the air, and spread out into an inescapable net that enveloped all 4 ancient godly weapons. In an instant, the auras of the 4 ancient godly weapons weakened. They were entangled in the net and couldn't move. What? The grave god was speechless with shock. When he saw the words on the sword talismans, the shock in his heart was even more indescribable. It wasn't very difficult to understand. It said, odd changes, even changes, the symbol depends on the quadrant. Chapter 1535. You can't escape. Jinka was wearing a brown tang suit, and the white robe over it fluttered in the wind. He had raised his sword talisman's suppression to the highest level, and instantly created an inescapable net that contained the 4 ancient divine weapons with overwhelming pressure. From the looks of it, it seemed that everything was over. Sitting against the wall of the ruins, Wang Ling was exceptionally calm, because everything was a predictable scene. These ancient divine weapons had a mechanism to constantly resurrect, and while they looked difficult to deal with, Wang Ling was well aware that they were no match for Jinka. It would be a piece of cake for Jinka to suppress them. However, the grave god's ultimate goal was to rescue Peng Shiren. It would be hard for him to send just these 4 ancient divine weapons to support the overall situation. Even if more ancient divine weapons arrived later on, it would be useless. Wang Ling had never had a head-on confrontation with the grave god, and had only sent him a bomb, made from the new Heavenly Tao magic cube as a gift. He had almost blown the grave god up. He needed to highlight the key point here. It was, almost, in Wang Ling's opinion, the grave god's ability to survive his trap was already amazing. Peng Shiren had said that even Dao ancestor Wang had been afraid of the grave god back then. He had been so afraid that the grand cultivation ancestor had hunted him down throughout the universe. But in the end, the grave god hadn't died. He had just been divided into 2 parts and sealed away. Now he had broken the seal again. Wang Ling felt that he had to be vigilant. In order to rescue Peng Shiren, the grave god had used these 4 ancient divine weapons, which proved that he still had some foundation back then. But, was that all? Wang Ling somehow felt that there was some kind of conspiracy behind this. Senior, we can't hold on any longer. Seeing that the 4 ancient divine weapons were trapped, Chiechihu shouted anxiously. He never expected that even this great senior from the grave god wouldn't be able to do anything to this youngster. Even his sword spirit couldn't restrain him. After all, that was just an ordinary-looking peachwood sword. But the gap in their combat strength was so huge. You're in too much of a hurry. The grave god's expression was calm. This peachwood sword is indeed stronger than I expected. But that's not what I meant when I said we could hold on. His ancient divine weapons had been specially forged for his conquest of the universe back then, so they were strong. But the grave goddess was also very clear about this. These 4 ancient divine weapons weren't enough to deal with Wang Ling. At this moment, he slightly closed his eyes and followed an aura that came from outside the inner world. Boom. The next moment, several 100 million light-years away from Earth, several tens of thousands of celestial bodies were pierced through by a pitch-black spear that was covered in runes and then exploded. Spiritual energy soared into the sky, creating a terrifying scene. At the same time, both inside and outside the inner world, Wang Ling and Golden Lamp also raised their heads, feeling the fluctuation of this aura. This is. On Earth, Jin Deng frowned. The familiar aura that came from outside the infinite Milky Way made him immediately raise his guard. He immediately moved and shrunk the ground to an inch, blocking this aura from rushing toward Earth in an attempt to intercept it. He's here. Inside the devouring star, the grave god opened his eyes and looked as if he had everything planned out. Everything was as he had expected. Monk Golden Lamp wanted to stop him. But could it be stopped? In the universe, a golden path that ordinary cultivators couldn't see appeared. It looked like a gorgeous carpet that had sprouted from the end of the universe. The creature standing on the golden carpet had 2 horns on its head and wide steel wings. It was currently only the size of an adult, but in fact it was a condensed form. Its real body was hundreds of millions of meters tall. This was the second time the monk had seen it. It's really you. The monk's pupils contracted. The creature in front of him was none other. It was Dao ancestor Wang's Dharma form. The creature called Ho. It was also one of the few very special Dharma forms that could move freely without the will of its master. Wang Ling instantly understood when this Dharma form appeared. It turned out that this was the grave god's plan from the beginning. He speculated. Back then, Dao ancestor Wang had probably given the task of cleaning up the ancient divine weapons to his own Dharma forms. But some of them had been kept as a trump card. For example, the ones in front of him had hidden their auras very well, so they had escaped disaster. Now the grave god had brought these ancient divine weapons out again. He didn't really want to rely on the power of the ancient divine weapons to delay them. His real goal was, he wanted to deliberately leak the aura of the ancient divine weapons to lure Ho here. Ho was Dao ancestor Wang's biggest enemy. The grave god had a long-standing feud with this Ho. He knew this all too well, which was why he had taken advantage of it. Clearing up the ancient divine weapons and protecting Dao ancestor Wang's only legacy, which was Peng Shiren, who was currently trapped in the king's eye, these were all tasks for Ho. Ho, Shiren is no longer the Shiren he used to be. You and I should both know this very well. This humble monk advises you to let go of your obsession and stop protecting him. Outside Earth, Monk Golden Lamp stood in front of the golden carpet and kindly advised Ho. Boom. Ho crossed his arms, and with a single thought, the aura of primal chaos burst forth in a flash of heavenly Tao. It gave off an endless aura of destruction. He didn't say a word, but his attitude was very clear. Although Tao Ancestor Wang was nowhere to be found, he would still do his best to complete the task that Tao Ancestor Wang had given him, clearing up the ancient divine weapons, protecting Peng Shiren. He wanted all of them. The insensible golden lamp monk stood in front of him, making him unhappy. He was just a little monk from back then, who had almost become Tao Ancestor Wang's disciple. If it hadn't been for the fact that Tao Ancestor Wang liked monks, Ho would have erased this rude monk long ago. Now, the little monk who had grown up back then was actually bold enough to stand in his way. Furious, Ho tried to use the ancient aura of destruction to kill the monk. However, Golden Lamp was no longer the same as it had been back then. This level of intimidation was useless. He had an agreement with Wang Ling. Even when Wang Ling wasn't around, he would do his best to protect Earth. And now, in the face of his former opponent, the monk just put his palms together and displayed the Supreme Buddha's light of Buddhism. In an instant, the universe lit up. The Buddha's light and the three-colored Buddha fire of the past, future, and present that the monk emitted seemed to have the power to illuminate everything. At that moment, even Ho was a little astonished. The little monk had progressed too quickly back then. Since you're so insensible, I'll have to kill you. The next second, Ho opened his mouth. With a wave of his hand, he summoned a pitch-black rune spear. Assuming a throwing posture, he abruptly threw it at the monk's head. With a rumble, space collapsed. This black spear was so terrifying that it forcibly split the space outside Earth in half, distorting it to form a series of new black holes. The monk frowned slightly. He just stretched out an index finger, which magnified infinitely in the universe, and blocked the spear's head. This was Monk Golden Lamp's rhinoceros finger. It was also the strongest finger technique that Tyrant could use at the moment. The two of them fought back and forth. Wang Ling was in the inner world, but he could already feel the spirit of Earth trembling. If this went on sooner or later, all human cultivators would notice this battle on an alien planet. Helpless, Wang Ling sighed and could only use the power of the King's Eye again to amplify Peng Shi's power like a Wi-Fi amplifier. It directly extended into the universe. He sensed that the space around him had changed. Ho withdrew his rune spear and stopped. He hadn't expected other experts to actually exist. With a slight hesitation in his eyes, he looked in the direction of Earth. He saw Wang Ling in the inner world in the direction of Sun Island. Then he looked at the monk, lost in thought, and asked, "Your disciple?" This question scared Monk Golden Lamp so much that he started sweating on the spot. Chapter 1536. He looked at Wang Ling from afar. In the inner plane, the young man sat paralyzed in front of the ruins, looking very tired. As his master, Monk Jindeng chose to stop him, blocking his way. After thinking about it for a while, he felt that his deduction was completely reasonable. Yes, you were used. This penniless monk advises you to stop. Jindeng stared at the steel-winged creature in front of him and frowned, because the current situation was extremely unfavorable. Fortunately, Wang Ling had reacted quickly and used the King's Eye to expand the inner world to include more than half of the universe on the periphery of Earth as a part of the inner world. This was to prevent Tao Wu's next move from destroying the inner plane and affecting the real world. The inner world expanded under the radiation of the King's Eye. The width, thickness, and strength were all improved from the original foundation. Do I need you to teach me how to do things? His eyes were fixed on the monk. It was a pair of eyes filled with chaos. On the other hand, she was a great living being that was born from within the chaos, and its strength wasn't inferior to Tao Ancestor Wang's divine beast when it was just born. The stupid groundhog that was still stuck in an autistic state and hadn't been petrified. "I'm just carrying out master's orders," said the Grim. "This is blind loyalty," Jindeng replied. They faced each other in space. In the next moment, Wang Ling realized that Grizzly's sharp claws were tightly gripping his rune spear, and instantly, a boundless aura of primal chaos was released. This was an extremely concentrated chaotic aura. It gave people the illusion that they were in chaos. This was the normal fluctuation of an ancestor-level expert, and given the monk's strength, he could naturally withstand it. However, this was equivalent to changing the environment around him, and any human cultivator, except Wang Ling, including the monk, would feel uncomfortable in the primal chaos chi. Just like an outstanding diver. Even if a monk could withstand the assault of the chaotic aura, there was still a limit. It was just that their speed was far higher than that of ordinary cultivators from Earth and the gods' domain. If it were anyone else, they would have already exploded under such fluctuations. It seems that you are no longer the little monk from back then. As a progenitor realm expert, you was very surprised by Tyrant's current growth. 10,000 years ago, the golden lamp would have lost consciousness in less than 5 seconds under his primal chaos chi. In fact, whether it was innate talent, moral character, or every aspect, even the golden lamp surpassed Prungshiren's. If he could get Tao Ancestor Wang's guidance, Monk Jin Deng could save himself a lot of detours. But what he couldn't understand was, in the end, Tao Ancestor Wang still chose Prungshiren. Furthermore, he had ordered him to protect this one and only true inheritor. This was the mission that Tao Ancestor Wang had set down all those years ago, so Deng Long naturally could not go against it. It was the same even if the Golden Lamp monk, who had grown up, stood in front of him. Clang. Therefore, in the next second, what awaited the monk was a terrifying rune spear surrounded by endless chaotic energy. The vast sky strike from before was just a test. This was his full strength. The chaotic energy that spread out was mixed with symbols that continuously dimmed and then lit up. It tore apart the sky, terrifying beyond compare as it pierced towards the golden lamp once more. Monk Jin Deng frowned and took out a golden wooden fish. Deng. He raised his hand and threw out the wooden fish. This wooden fish was enlarging at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, it exploded with heavenly energy and fought against the long spear. Monk, is that all you have? Deng sneered and let out a loud battle cry. For a moment, the godly sound filled Wang Ling's ears. Endless pressure came crashing down. Even if it didn't reach Wang Ling, that terrifying sound wave instantly spread out in all directions. Wang Ling saw that the 4 ancient divine weapons suppressed by Jinka's sword talismans actually broke apart on the spot. The huge sound wave hit the ground, and Jinka's body was unsteady as he was actually sent flying. Wang Ling reacted quickly. He got up lightly, calculated Jinka's position, and held him in his arms like he was a doll. This was a sound technique that was specially designed to deal with ancient divine weapons. In order to be responsible for clearing out ancient divine weapons, Deng had studied a lot of methods. And this one was the most effective. These monsters, which were made of special materials bred out of chaos, weren't afraid of physical spells, but could be crushed with one blow at a specific frequency of sound waves. This specific sound wave, on the other hand, was harmless to creatures other than the ancient divine weapons, and wouldn't cause any injuries or deaths. At most, they would be knocked unconscious. To be honest, Deng's move inspired Wang Ling at the same time. It turned out that ancient divine weapons could be dealt with like this. He had learned it. After this battle roar, Deng's first task, which was to clear out the remnants of the ancient divine weapons, had been completed. All that was left was to rescue Prungshiren. His distant battle roar was meant to crush the ancient divine weapons and knock Wang Ling unconscious in passing. But what Deng hadn't expected was, the ancient divine weapons had been destroyed. But that youngster and the white-haired sword spirit who looked like a child were both unscathed, and hadn't even lost a hair. Your disciple isn't bad, monk, Deng said. This was a rare compliment. In the monk's memory, Swan rarely praised anyone. In fact, that battle roar just now hadn't just been Deng's test for Wang Ling. It was also Wang Ling's test for Deng. This already showed that this Tao Ancestor Wang's Dharma form was different from the opponents Wang Ling had encountered before, because Jinka was injured. The moment Wang Ling caught him, he had already sensed that Jinka had suffered internal injuries. Although it didn't show, it wasn't very serious. But Deng had been able to injure his sword spirit with just one battle roar. As far as Wang Ling could remember, this was indeed the first time this had happened. Sword Master, I'm sorry. Held in Wang Ling's arms, Jinka felt a little ashamed as he felt Wang Ling use magic to heal him. Although Jinka had been injured this time because he had underestimated the enemy. But given the current situation, he really couldn't find any extra excuses to absolve himself. An injury was an injury. Wang Ling let out a soft sigh helplessly. The single-use talismans on him had started to burn again. Of the 90-odd talismans, more than 20 had already been destroyed. He knew that he shouldn't show off for a moment. He should save some single-use talismans. He still had the competition later on. But now, seeing Jinka injured, Wang Ling suddenly felt like his own son had been hammered. For some reason, he couldn't take it anymore. The next moment, Wang Ling raised his hand. Deng didn't understand what on earth this youngster was doing at that moment. But very quickly he instantly understood. Because in the next moment, a tremendous force pressed down on his back. It was earth. That youngster's palm actually split open the primal chaos and passed through layers of the void, carrying with it the aura of the great Tao that could split the heavens and the earth. Pressing down on his back, it slapped him toward earth. Wang Ling's attack was too sudden. The mighty rules of the great Tao made Deng unable to react for a moment. He stared at Wang Ling. He couldn't figure out how a youngster could have such terrifying strength. He didn't even have time to block it. Deng's entire body had already passed through Earth's atmosphere with the force of the impact, and he charged toward Earth's surface. There was a loud bang. It was like a comet crashing into Earth. In front of Wang Ling, an incomparably huge sinkhole was smashed open. Chapter 1537. Bayan climbed out of the sinkhole, with a radius of hundreds of kilometers. His claws were clasped at the edge of the sinkhole, and he had mixed feelings. Growing up to this age, even Tao ancestor Wang had never beaten him. He didn't expect to be ambushed by the monk's disciple. And it even succeeded. Wang Ling strolled over and looked down at Pai. This was the Dharma life form of Tao ancestor Wang. It was indeed different from the enemies he had faced before. He had clearly been slapped on the back, but he didn't seem to have suffered any internal injuries. He just looked a little disheveled. If it was anyone else, they would have already vomited blood. Wang Ling pondered in his heart. He knew that a great battle was inevitable. In order to save the one-time use talismans on him, he removed the remaining 60 or so talismans and put them away for the time being. These single-use talismans were for the later matches. It would be a pity if it was used up in this battle. Seeing dust climb out of the sinkhole, Wang Ling wanted to step on its toes. However, when he thought about how his foot would definitely be stained with a piece of meat paste, he retracted his foot. He was also wearing a pair of white shoes. Washing shoes was the most troublesome. If he used magic to clean it, the purification power would be too great, and it would easily deform the shoes. Thus, he was usually used to washing shoes himself. Don't think that I won't kill you just because you are the monk's disciple. After climbing out of the sinkhole, Ho quickly floated into the air. The black runic spear in his hand burst forth, and his entire body emitted a chaotic light that swept through the heavens and the earth. Wang Ling had rarely seen such a doomsday-like scene. More often than not, when Wang Ling made a move, the entire planet would disappear before the end of the world arrived. There was no doubt that, as the Dharma form of Tao ancestor Wang, the Hui possessed unparalleled power. In fact, such power was even more terrifying than Peng Shiren's. The strength of the Dharma idol was, in fact, a reflection of its owner's battle prowess. With such battle prowess, Tao ancestor Wang's battle prowess was definitely greater than his. At that moment, Peng Shiren, who was imprisoned in the king's eye, also looked at this scene in astonishment. He thought that after he stepped into the ancestral ancestor realm, he had already attained a level that surpassed his master, Tao ancestor Wang. But from the looks of it now, the gap between them still existed. This feeling of disparity made him feel helpless and unwilling. He didn't want to be restricted by the king's eye. But in this situation he couldn't break free. Although it wasn't out of his own will, it seemed that the only person who could help him escape now was Bai. His towering rage caused his aura to grow even stronger. The entire inner world was filled with waves of sand, and the sky was filled with primal chaos granules. This was a phenomenon that occurred when primal chaos chi was raised to an extreme. The grains of sand were like a vast ocean that swept through the sky. The destructive power of the primal chaos grains was extremely terrifying. If an ordinary person were to be sucked into this storm of primal chaos grains, they would immediately be torn to pieces. This move was often used to clear the field, and also to test how strong Wang Ling's body was. In the end, the young man just stood there in the storm with his hands in his pockets. Even his bangs didn't move. After the unexpected and somewhat awkward opening, the surroundings fell into deathly silence once more. Jin Dang descended from space to take care of Jinka on the side. When he saw Wang Ling slap down Deng Long, the monk already knew that Wang Ling had decided to do it himself. This battle was unavoidable. He wanted to persuade her, but he found that he was stubborn. He couldn't be blamed. Everything Deng Long had done was because he was loyal to Dao ancestor Wang's orders. Perfected one. The monk's eyes lit up. He knew that Wang Ling had already sensed his thoughts. He was pleading for mercy on behalf of Deng Long, hoping that Wang Ling would be gentler and not kill Deng Long with just a few slaps. Although blind loyalty was indeed difficult to deal with. But Deng Long had quietly done a lot of things in space over the years that others couldn't do for him. He had also worked hard. Wang Ling understood this principle. To be honest, even if the monk hadn't said anything, Wang Ling didn't have any intention of killing Deng Long. He just wanted to teach this arrogant and conceited Dharma creature a little lesson, that was all. Besides, Deng Long was different from his previous opponents. This was different from his previous opponents, and Wang Ling actually wasn't confident that he could really kill or seriously injure Dusk with one slap. He looked at Deng Long. At that moment, there was only one thought in his mind. That was, in this battle, he might have to be a little more serious. Interesting. At that moment, Zhang gripped the rune spear and said to the monk who was taking care of Jinka on the side, "Monk, this disciple of yours is indeed skilled. Of all the juniors I've fought against, Zhang would like to call him the strongest." Wang Ling and Jin Dang. This misunderstanding was too deep. Jin Dang actually wanted to explain it clearly, but he didn't know how to start. Because his first reaction when he saw Wang Ling was, and Deng Long was the same now. He just felt that Wang Ling was too young. It was impossible for a teenager to be invincible in the world. Thus, Jin Dang felt that he really wasn't qualified to laugh at Deng Long. They were all experienced people. This matter didn't need much explanation. He just needed to take a few slaps to know. What a pity, monk. At that moment, Deng Long pointed the tip of his spear at Wang Ling. Although your disciple is excellent, he will definitely fall here today. As soon as he said that, in an instant, a great battle had begun. Like the roar of a ferocious beast in the primal chaos, the scene in front of them changed as space and time went haywire. The space in front of Wang Ling exploded on the spot. There was a loud boom. The earth split open, stretching out endlessly in units of 10,000 li black fissures spread continuously in all directions, and everywhere was a bottomless black abyss. Endless chaotic flames gushed out of the fissures. Earth ancestor level? Wang Ling frowned. At that moment, he indeed sensed Deng Long's true realm. A progenitor expert, and an earth ancestor at that. His strength was indeed extraordinary. This scene looked destructive and very grand, but in fact, this was just a basic operation of the earth ancestor level, and Deng Long hadn't completely taken it seriously. Wang Ling's thoughts at that moment were, fortunately, he had reinforced the inner world. Otherwise, it would have collapsed. The chaotic flame scorched the entire inner world, and Wang Ling's black hair was dyed fiery red. His king's eyes were even more fiery red. Wang Ling was displeased by this doomsday scene. The existence of the chaotic flames was actually very bad for Jinka. Wang Ling frowned slightly. Then he started to activate his king's eye. A golden vortex overflowed from Wang Ling's pupils, and then doubled in size until it was like an artificial black hole that swallowed up all the chaotic things in front of it. Then, the chaotic inner world returned to calm. Is this the only way? Wang Ling stared at the Dharma creature whose pupils were greatly shaken, and had only one thing left to say. P.S. To sort out the realms again. Foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, soul formation, itinerant immortal, true venerated, venerated immortal, sage immortal, Dao master, Dao god, Dao ancestor, human ancestor, earth ancestor, heavenly ancestor, ancestral king, ancestral immortal. Wang Ling. Chapter 1538. The king's eye instantly swallowed up the originally vast chaotic doomsday, and the raging flames of chaos were instantly extinguished, looking like lonely smoke in the desert. He withdrew the king's eye and immersed himself in it for only a few seconds. The next moment, there was a loud bang. Endless chaotic chi, accompanied by the flames of chaos, engulfed dusk even more fiercely than before. This was the king's eye's charged counterattack, which had the effect of multiplying the damage. The longer Wang Ling held it in, the greater the power. He didn't dare hold it in for too long. If he held it in for a few minutes and used 100 times the power, the entire inner-world solar system might be instantly annihilated. Inside the king's eye, Peng Shiren saw this amazing scene. He had imagined how strong Wang Ling's king's eye would be, but the ability to instantly absorb spells, and then double the damage. Peng Shiren had never seen it before. The scene in front of him was too horrifying. The flames of chaos spewed out by the king's eye were several times more powerful than Dusk's earlier outburst, and the blazing heat caused space to burn up on the spot, forming a large black hole. The fierce tongue of fire swallowed up the ground in front of it, and in an instant, everything within sight was scorched. A great deal of seawater evaporated, and for a moment, the whole world was filled with white mist. This move had hit Dusk squarely, but in the end, it was an ability that could return the favor several times over. Moreover, Dusk's own battle strength was extremely strong. This little bit of power probably couldn't hurt him. Wang Ling's move was both a deterrent and a coercive one. He wanted to make it look like Dusk had used all his strength. After all, he had never fought an Earth Progenitor Realm being before, and he didn't know what the upper limit of his current strength was. If he could beat Dusk, then his strength should be above the Earth Ancestor Realm, right? Who knew? Dusk's figure appeared again in the white mist, and he looked a little taller than before. He had grown to more than 3 meters tall, just like those ancient divine weapons. Although this huge figure looked terrifying, it didn't give Wang Ling any sense of oppression. The only difference was that he was wearing a pitch-black armor that was engraved with heavenly Dao runes. It's the Chaos Armor. Jin Deng frowned. He had a few encounters with Baiyan, so he was well aware of some of Baiyan's techniques. The Chaos Armor was extracted from the Chaos when Sui was born. It could be considered a gift from the Chaos. Even the Chaos Spear in his hand was an item of the Chaos. Chaos artifacts were a level stronger than world-defying artifacts. Now that the two Chaos items were in Ho's hands, his battle prowess was actually even stronger than a progenitor. After so many years, the Chaos Armor had been strengthened to a terrifying level under Zhui's constant refinement. It allowed Dinglong to travel freely in the primal chaos, and was immune to all damage from the primal chaos. In other words, the king's eye's counterattack had failed. Dusk emerged from the fog. At that moment, the way he looked at Wang Ling had clearly changed. Then, he looked at monk Jin Deng, who was standing timidly on the side, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Why is your master weaker than your disciple?" Jin Deng wanted to refute, but when he thought about it, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with what he said. Apart from their master-disciple relationship, he was indeed weaker than Wang Ling. But to hear this from Dinglong, Jin Deng felt that Dinglong had already acknowledged Wang Ling as his opponent. But it was clear that Dinglong didn't understand the seriousness of the problem. Because Ling Zhenren was Ling Zhenren. Wang Ling. He had never needed someone to approve of him. In the next second, Dinglong transformed the rune spear in his hand into a pair of boxing gloves that firmly covered his arms. He stopped probing with long-range spells, and directly switched to close combat. Clang. A simple and violent blow landed on Wang Ling's right arm, which he had used to block. It didn't hurt much, and only felt a little itchy. In contrast, after Dinglong's blow, Wang Ling felt a series of pained cries in Dinglong's heart. F***K. It hurts. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, Wang Ling. But Dinglong endured it and didn't directly show it. Then Wang Ling still didn't make a move, and merely assumed a defensive posture. The two of them intertwined, and the battle looked particularly intense. In a short period of time, Dinglong and Wang Ling exchanged hundreds of blows. Nobody has ever fought with Sword Master like this. On the side, Jinka's expression changed. Although he was just watching, he was also learning. As the #1 sword spirit under Wang Ling, and the master of Sword King World, Jinka's potential had actually yet to be fully displayed. Looking at Jinka's serious little face, Monk was also horrified in his heart. As expected, this master and servant pair were both monsters. They could grow just by watching. It was like how a lot of slacker students who didn't listen well in class comforted themselves. In any case, what the teacher said was in the books, and since it was in the books, they could just go home and read. It didn't matter what class they were in, they could even slack off. But it turned out that there were some things that couldn't be understood by watching. Those who could understand could. Like Jinka, they were all freaks. Donglong's body movements, martial arts and combat skills were all very skilled and advanced. The amount of experience accumulated over the ages was unimaginable. At first, Monk Golden Lamp didn't understand why Wang Ling hadn't made a move, but had instead assumed a defensive posture. But at that moment he saw Jinka studying on the side. He instantly understood what was going on. It turned out that Wang Ling had done it on purpose. He had deliberately let Donglong fight Donglong, thus giving Jinka a chance to learn on the side. To be able to understand just by watching. That was outrageous. But in a showdown between experts, both sides could sense each other. Wang Ling's obvious perfunctory attitude made Donglong furious. Do you only know how to defend? Aren't you very good at fighting? Come, fight me. He clamored as he used inch punch to quickly attack with a magic weapon. In a short second, his fists were flying, and he could throw tens of thousands of punches. Wang Ling casually blocked him. At the same time, his clone observed Jinka's learning progress. The little guy's students were very fast. This was his sword spirit, so he knew best. After about 2 minutes of fighting Donglong, Wang Ling felt that Jinka's learning time was almost up. Boom! It was a punch without any magic, and it was the frontal attack Donglong had been waiting for. That's right. That's it. Come. Let me see how strong your punch is. Before he could finish the word strong, Donglong's ecstatic gaze landed squarely on Donglong's abdomen. This was a punch that Donglong couldn't stop with the naked eye. He could throw tens of thousands of punches in a second, which was already extremely fast. Who knew how many times stronger than those female boxers? But Wang Ling's punches were even more ferocious. Before the naked eye could react, a punch was already aimed at Donglong's abdomen. What followed was a sharp pain in his abdomen, and he vomited blood like crazy. Cough. Purple blood sprayed out of Donglong's mouth. It was a very big mouthful, and when it fell to the ground, it immediately burned a pit that was millions of li deep. Wang Ling frowned. He hadn't expected Donglong's blood to have such powerful energy. Only now did he realize why the monk had asked him to go easy on Donglong and not kill him right away. On one hand, it was because of their old friendship. On the other hand, it was to prevent further damage to Earth. If Donglong died, he would definitely self-destruct. The destructive power brought about by the self-detonation might bring disaster to half of the universe. Just a mouthful of blood had such terrifying destructive power. If Donglong exploded like a watermelon, Wang Ling would have detonated a massive cosmic nuclear bomb. Clang! At that moment, there was a vibrating sound. Donglong took out a magic artifact that glowed purple. That was an ancient diagram that looked like an object from ancient times. It possessed a terrifying pressure. Was it another chaos artifact? The pressure from a chaos artifact was very strong. It was the most terrifying of all the magic artifacts Wang Ling had seen so far. Who knew how many times stronger it was than those world-defying magic artifacts? Go! Donglong gave a light shout, and the ancient diagram flew up to wrap around Wang Ling. The Supreme Corpse Winding Diagram. The monk recognized this magic artifact. This was one of Dao Ancestor Wang's chaos artifacts back then. It was just that he hadn't expected this chaos artifact to actually appear in Donglong's hands. The Supreme Corpse Winding Diagram. Back then, Dao Ancestor Wang had used this magic artifact to suppress countless powerful enemies. Furthermore, every successful suppression would cause the power of the corpse wrapping picture to increase exponentially. This was a magic artifact with no upper limit. It was ridiculously strong. Wang Ling was very strong, and Donglong had taken note of this, which was why he had taken out this magic artifact. If it could successfully suppress Wang Ling, Who knew how many times this corpse winding diagram would be instantly strengthened? You can't escape. After taking out the corpse winding diagram, Danglong assumed the attitude of a spectator. Back then, there were many ancient experts who were suppressed by this corpse winding diagram. All of them had outstanding strength. In the end, they were all defeated by the corpse winding diagram. The strength of the corpse winding diagram can no longer be calculated in numerical terms. Danglong looked extremely confident. Ling Zhenren, be careful. You mustn't be caught by the diagram. Even the monk became nervous. In the history of chaos artifacts, the Supreme Corpse winding diagram status was self-evident. Although the monk firmly believed in Wang Ling's strength, seeing Danglong take out the Supreme Corpse winding diagram at that moment, he still couldn't help giving a warning. Because in the long river of history, he had seen too many experts who had underestimated the Supreme Corpse winding diagram, and in the end had been suppressed. Hadn't those experts been able to make the sun and moon pale with a wave of their arms? However, they had all lost to the Supreme Corpse winding diagram. Just like the name of this magic artifact. Suppressed. And then smelted. Turned into a corpse that had been left behind through the ages. At that moment, when the Supreme Corpse winding diagram unfurled, the long diagram, which stretched for thousands of kilometers, was filled with the endless stench of blood and the aura of primal chaos. Wang Ling's pupils instantly contracted slightly. On the long scroll in front of him, countless white bones appeared, densely piled up on the corpse-wrapping picture. These were all experts who had been suppressed by the Supreme Corpse winding diagram. Trapped in the diagram, they had finally died after being drained of all their strength. Some of these white bones were sitting, indicating their powerlessness. 591 net. Some were standing, indicating their helplessness. And some were clinging to the edges of the diagram, as if they would climb out in the next moment. They had tried to break free of the corpse winding diagram, but failed, indicating their despair. Wang Ling actually hadn't expected this. There actually existed such an inhuman magic artifact in the universe. But these so-called chaos artifacts weren't man-made, but had been bred and refined from the primal chaos. Because they were limited in number, they were so powerful that they were precious. Each chaos artifact had its own independent intelligence, and it mainly depended on whether or not one had the ability to subdue them. When Dao ancestor Wang had obtained this corpse winding diagram back then, it hadn't been very powerful. But now, after so many years, it had devoured and drained so many experts. The corpse wrapping painting was clearly worthy of the two words supreme in front, forcibly suppressing Wang Ling. Then, it would use the power of the corpse winding diagram to release Peng Shiren, who had been sealed in the king's eye. This was Wang Ling's next step in his plan. You were able to force me to use the supreme corpse winding diagram. Wang Ling. I acknowledge your strength, Wang Ling said. Under Wang Ling's control, the long scroll was like a swimming dragon as it surrounded Wang Ling from all directions. Withdraw. The next second, Wang Ling's palm fiercely clenched, and the long scroll abruptly withdrew. But at that moment with a soaring brown sword light, heaven and earth shook and flared up again. Wang Ling hadn't expected the sword spirit of the Peachwood sword, which had been injured by his battle cry, to attack again. You overestimate yourself. He sneered as he manipulated the corpse winding diagram to sweep it toward Jinka. This was a chaotic weapon that had been continuously growing throughout the ages. How could a little sword spirit who had just been born shake it? But in the next moment, the brown sword light in the air suddenly exploded. Tens of thousands of shooting stars fell from the sky like a cluster of exploding fireworks. In an instant, the corpse winding diagram collapsed on the spot. The long scroll was cut up and reduced to countless pieces of waste paper, and the fragments scattered all over the sky. Wang Ling was taken aback by this sudden scene. He could clearly sense that this little sword spirit's aura was different from before. In a short period of time, it had actually become stronger than before? What on earth was this? You destroyed my corpse winding diagram. You're courting death. With a loud roar, Wang rushed forward to meet Jinka's attack. Jinka saw the path of Wang Ling's fist, and easily dodged it with a sidestep. This body technique looked a little familiar to Wang Ling, because it was Wang Ling's own body technique. And now, Wang Ling finally understood why Wang Ling hadn't fought him properly before. It turned out that all of this was to provide an opportunity for his sword spirit to teach him online. He was the spirit of Tao ancestor Wang's Dharma idol. He had actually been used by a youngster. Wang Ling couldn't help feeling like he was going to vomit blood. This feeling was like that psycho female painter who had received 2,900 yuan as a drawing fee, painted a work of 500 yuan, and publicly hung up a post saying that she had been bullied yesterday. Kuxuan was so angry that he almost had a brain hemorrhage. The Supreme Corpse winding diagram was a gift from Tao ancestor Wang. All these years, Wang Ling had used it carefully. But he never expected that today, the corpse winding diagram would actually be directly cut into pieces. "I'll fight you to the death." Wang Ling went berserk and charged forward recklessly. Jinka was also a little angry. Wang Ling's appearance earlier had caused him to lose face in front of Wang Ling. But now he had gotten his revenge. But this clearly wasn't enough. "Scabbard, come." This time it was Jinka himself who spoke. Under these extremely calm words, a peachwood sword scabbard suddenly appeared in the inner world. At the critical moment, Bai Qiao offered herself. It wasn't that Jinka felt that he couldn't beat Wang Ling now. Instead, he felt that in the face of Tao ancestor Wang's Dharma idol, he should show his complete form as a sign of respect. It wasn't because he wanted to fuse together that he had come up with this excuse. When Bai Qiao appeared, Wang Ling's face was full of disbelief. There was only one question mark in his heart. And that was, why did this scabbard have a spirit? The scabbard and the sword were originally inseparable. It was impossible for there to be both a sword spirit and a scabbard spirit. But the scene in front of him was clearly beyond Wang Ling's understanding once again. Disregarding everything else, he charged at Jinka. After a flash of snow-white light, the figure of a youngster slightly older than Jinka appeared in front of him. The youngster was wearing a white Taoist robe, his snow-white hair dancing in the wind, and the hair protruding from the top of his head was particularly dazzling. His gaze was condescending, and with an air of arrogance he reached out and grabbed Ho's fist, squeezing it tightly in his palm. When Wang Ling saw this scene, he already knew that there was no longer any suspense in the following battle. Wang Ling didn't even want to kill him. Wang Ling probably wouldn't even be able to break through Jingbai's defense. White snow started to fall in the inner world. The snow contained primal chaos chi. Wang Ling had always been sensitive to chaos, so he could sense it. "Who are you?" From the primal chaos snow, Wang Ling sensed that the sword spirit in front of him, which had been reborn after the fusion, had an extraordinary origin. He frowned and stared at Jingbai. "You don't have the right to know," Jingbai retorted. He stood with his hands behind his back, his face as white as jade, and when he spoke, there was a sense of the vastness of the great Tao. "No one has ever spoken to me like this. You're too confident." Wang Ling snorted. When he had been invincible in the world, Jingbai probably hadn't even been born yet. Actually, he couldn't quite figure out why Jingbai had the guts to talk to him like this. But in the next moment, Jingbai looked at him coldly. "It's over." In his bland voice, a sword light mixed with brown and white was born from Jingbai's fingertips with the power to split heaven and earth. The intense sword intent stretched for billions of miles, and affected the entire solar system. All the planets shrank and trembled when they felt it. Although this battle was in the inner world, this fluctuation was so strong that it permeated everything. Everyone outside the inner world suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. At that time, all the people on Earth who had inexplicably shivered because of Jingbai's sword chi, which had permeated both inside and outside the inner world. This sword light was indomitable and stretched for who knew how many tens of thousands of miles, vast and boundless. Wang Ling couldn't understand it at all. How could a sword spirit have such terrifying power? The earth began to split apart, and the spirit of the earth in the inner world howled in pain, as if a kitchen knife had been stabbed into its abdomen, and was slowly slicing it apart. Boom. Following that, bolts of white lightning appeared in the sky, boundlessly chaotic. The sound was louder than anyone could imagine, and countless snow-colored lightning dragons were roaring. The sound seemed to come from eternity, and it was terrifying. At that moment, Wang Ling's expression finally changed as he looked at Jingbai. You're from eternity?" He had seen all the experts in eternity, but he didn't remember such a person. You're thinking too much. Jingbai's face was as calm as an ancient well, and he only snorted. Impossible. You're definitely an eternity figure. And your master too. How can you only be 16 years old? Wang Ling and Jingbai in front of him increasingly felt that their origins were extraordinary. Are you trying to excuse your failure? This king has seen a lot of trash. I thought you were different, but I didn't expect you to be no different from those trash. You know you're going to lose, so you're just looking for excuses. Jingbai frowned slightly. Have you never thought that we just look older? Wang Ling was speechless for a moment. Even if they looked older, they couldn't be eternally old. The two people in front of him were obviously at the level of eternity. However, many of those eternally strong experts had already been suppressed in that supreme corpse shrouding painting just now. Come down. You're not fit to stand in the same void as this king. In the next second, as Jingbai spoke, this terrifying sword qi that pierced through heaven and earth suddenly hummed. It suddenly charged forward. It slashed at Wang Ling's body. The pitch-black chaos armor shook violently, and Wang Ling instantly coughed up blood again. This sword qi was too strong. Even with the chaos armor's protection, the sword qi still broke apart like an electric current, and darted into Wang Ling's body. Wang Ling felt as if he had been struck by a strong electric current. Rumble. Wang Ling's blood qi surged, and the chaos armor was torn to shreds by Jingbai's brownish-white sword qi on the spot. Countless fragments of the armor fell along with the light of chaos, and in the end, they gradually dissipated under the naked eye. Turning into dust in the universe, Wang Ling had lost. He had been utterly defeated, and he was well aware. Wang Ling had held back with this sword qi just now. The little sword spirit who had fused with Wang Ling was now the teenager Jingbai standing in front of him. His battle strength was above Earth ancestors. You. Blood seeped from the corners of Wang Ling's mouth as he struggled to get to his feet. Why on earth do you have to oppose me to this extent? Jingbai cocked his head and looked at him. My sword master has something in Peng Shiren's hands. What is it? Wang Ling gritted his teeth. He knew. Now that things had come to this, Wang Ling felt that they could only negotiate. His mission was to protect Peng Shiren. If Wang Ling could give up something to protect this person, Wang Ling felt that it was a good deal. A piece of black stone. Its radiation has the effect of restricting power, Jingbai said on Wang Ling's behalf. Heavenly black stone? Wang Ling frowned and gasped for breath. You're probably talking about the treasure left behind by my master, Dao ancestor Wang. The stone that was born out of chaos. It seems you know. That's my master's thing, of course I know, Wang Ling said. As long as we have this, we can let him go, right? This time Wang Ling stepped forward and said, yes. Peng Shiren actually wasn't that important. What Wang Ling really wanted was the stone. After all, Peng Shiren was such a noob. Wang Ling could capture him whenever he wanted. He had thought that Wang Ling would raise some other conditions. But at that moment, the other side heaved a sigh of relief. Wang Ling looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears as he directly cursed. F***K. Is it worth it for a piece of broken stone? If I had known that you wanted this stone to let people go, I wouldn't have fought you. Wang Ling's heart really ached. In order to rescue Peng Shiren, in addition to the Supreme Corpse winding up painting and his chaos armor, 2 whole chaos weapons. Chapter 1539. To be honest, although the chaos armor and the corpse wrapping diagram were chaos weapons, they were just 2 toys in Wang Ling's eyes. When he had been chased by the corpse picture earlier, he had looked weak, but in fact he had been giving Jinka, who had fused with Bai Qiao and become Jinka, a chance. As it turned out, Wang Ling's thinking was correct. It was rare to have a good coach who could make Jinka suffer at the start. Such an experience would probably be difficult to encounter in the future. The stronger you meet, the stronger you become. This was the reason why Jinka could become the Sword King World King, and also the reason why Jinka could become the #1 spirit sword under Wang Ling's command. The super high growth potential of S+ level brought with it a powerful learning ability. In the sword spirit circle, Jinka's strength could be said to be unmatched. Wang Ling felt that the main reason he had lost this battle was because he had made too many unnecessary movements and talked too much nonsense. Too much time had been given. Perhaps your battle strength was indeed stronger than Jinka's a second ago. But if he didn't kill Jinka right away, but the next second, when Jinka's battle strength surpasses yours after learning it, you'll be the one to be destroyed instead. But after thinking it over, he didn't say this battle summary aloud. This was because it seemed to be a problem that everyone who fought against them had. After Jingbai brought up his request for the heavenly hybrid stone, Wang Ling's expression changed slightly. Su's reaction was actually very surprising, because it seemed that not only was it very familiar with this kind of stone, but it also gave people the illusion that this stone seemed to be very common. What exactly is this heaven stone? On the side, Monk Jin Deng couldn't help stepping forward and asking, if you can provide the heavenly hybrid stone, Ling Jinren might release Shiren. Not only that, he might even be able to repair your 2 torn chaos artifacts. Repairing chaos artifacts? Bai laughed. Monk, are you joking? You and I both know what a chaos tool is. The Supreme Corpse shrouding diagram and my primal chaos armor have already been destroyed. It's impossible to repair them. Tyrant spread his hands and put on an expression that said, believe it or not, it's up to you. No one spoke, instead quietly waiting for Tian to explain the origin of the heaven hybrid stone. What kind of past did this mysterious black stone, which Wang Ling had been thinking about for a long time, have? Even he was very curious about it. Do you still remember when the Tao ancestors' cultivation level regressed during the endless ages? Swan and I spoke. The blood on his body had already dried up, and when he spoke, his body exuded a strong aura of kidney deficiency, as if it was difficult for him to even breathe. He had died. The indestructible black fur on his arms, chest, and body was burned to a crisp by Jingbai's sword qi. If not for the seriousness of the topic, the monk felt that he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He sat down cross-legged, adjusting his breathing as he spoke. He had completely given up on fighting Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling hadn't summoned his Dharma body spirit, he had to admit that the youngster in front of him was indeed ridiculously strong. He hadn't even defeated the sword spirit under the other party. So how could he possibly be a match for this youth? Is the regression of the realm related to the heaven hybrid stone? The monk frowned after hearing Yu's words, because in his impression, Tao ancestor Wang's realm was constantly advancing and retreating. It wasn't that it was unstable, but that Tao ancestor Wang would sometimes court death by experimenting with some new spells or exploring some unknown territory, so his realm would often regress. But Tao ancestor Wang was, after all, a pioneer of cultivation civilization. Even if his realm regressed, it wasn't a big deal, because he could cultivate it back. And it wouldn't be for too long. Lord Tao ancestor's realm regressing has happened from time to time, but that time in the endless ages was the most serious. Don't you have any suspicions, monk? Swan and I asked. What on earth happened? The heaven hybrid stone changed, and cracks appeared. Tao ancestor had to think of a way. Hearing this, the monk frowned. The so-called heaven hybrid stone referred to the very center of the universe's chaos. It was always quiet there, and if something happened, the land of chaos would expand recklessly into the universe. The dark matter hidden in the universe would erupt completely, and all the living beings in the universe would be annihilated. Then the heaven hybrid stone cracked? The monk asked. But he didn't think it was that simple. If it was just a story about Niwa mending the heavens, it would indeed be a little disappointing. Back then, a mysterious object appeared in the heaven hybrid stone. Tao ancestor said that if it was obtained by someone with ulterior motives, it would bring disaster to all the living beings in the universe. Since then, Tao ancestor has been thinking of a way to seal this mysterious object. What on earth is it? You're his Dharma form, but you've never seen it before? I can't see what it looks like at all. Even Tao ancestor can't see it clearly. Swan sighed. During that time, Tao ancestor went deep into danger to look for the heaven hybrid stone. He also fabricated the heavenly Tao magic cube and set it up in various parts of the universe. He said it was to restrain the chaos, but in fact, it was all to suppress this mysterious object. But what on earth is it? I don't know. Swan and I shook his head. Tao ancestor called it the mandate of heaven. Whoever obtains it can obtain the mandate of heaven. I see. At that moment, Jingbai nodded. In other words, that heaven hybrid stone was brought here by Tao ancestor Wang to restrain the mandate of heaven. That's right, Swan and I said. I don't know where Tao ancestor brought it, but I do have some left. This thing has a powerful sealing power. Don't you feel uncomfortable? Not at all. Swan and I said, because I have pica. He would often eat some strange things. As a result, I get very serious constipation. Everyone, Swan and I said, sometimes if you use too much force, you'll take off like a jet. So it's better to say that this heaven hybrid stone helped me. There's one in every bathroom in my mansion. Everyone. Clearly this was a tasteful scene. Just listening to it. Even Wang Ling couldn't help frowning. If you want the heaven hybrid stone, I can provide it. But the prerequisite is that you release Shiren. This is my agreement with Master. Please don't make things difficult for me, Swan and I said. Saying that, he took out a black box, and with a shake of his fingers, it landed in Wang Ling's hand. The black stone inside is the size of an egg. If you still don't think it's enough, I'll go back to my mansion's bathroom to get some more. That's enough. Wang Ling took the black box. Then he used his Swan and I power to release Peng Shiren's soul according to their agreement. After Peng Shiren was released, his face was full of curses. Just as he was about to speak, Swan and I covered his mouth. Then with a loud paw sound, Swan and I slapped him across the face. Swan and I was furious. Wastrel. For you. I destroyed 2 chaos weapons. Peng Shiren had never felt so aggrieved before. But now he could only endure it. At the same time, Peng Shiren hadn't expected Swan and I to appear this time. He had thought that Tao ancestor Wang would disappear. As the spirit of the aspect, Swan and I would also disappear. But he hadn't expected Swan and I to actually appear in front of him as an independent entity. And what on earth was that mysterious thing called destiny? This time, Peng Shiren felt that he had lost. But there were many new ideas in his mind. Chapter 1540. Wang Ling watched as dusk and Peng Shiren left. Peng Shiren was about 185 meters tall. Yet he was easily lifted up by one arm. Even souls had weight. Although Peng Shiren's cultivation was nothing compared to Wang Ling's, his soul was still very heavy. He carried him like carrying a chick. And she herself was more like a hen protecting her chick. He couldn't help falling into deep thought at the scene in front of him. This strong sense of déjà vu caused him to sigh in his heart. The fight with Bai could be considered an accident. At the same time, he was flabbergasted at how easily he had obtained the black stone that he had been longing for. Although the process was full of twists and turns, at least the result was within expectations. Wang Ling opened the black box in his hand and stared at the pitch-black heaven hybrid stone inside, which was surging with chaotic chi. Like before, his king's eye was unable to see through the essence of this heaven hybrid stone. Furthermore, he could clearly feel that his strength had been greatly suppressed by the heavenly hybrid stone. However, it was said to be gigantic. Even if he was suppressed, Wang Ling was still very strong. As for this black box, it was specially made by me. It had the ability to block the radiation of the heaven hybrid stone. Generally speaking, the heaven hybrid stone had the effect he wanted. But he couldn't use it right now, because the radiation from the mixed heaven stone was too strong. When this black box was open, it didn't just radiate Wang Ling. Even the monk and Jingbai next to him felt a strong sense of oppression. It wasn't long before Jingbai actually separated from the stone's radiation. It returned to the body and scabbard of the peachwood sword. Whether it was Jinka or Bai Qiao, their faces were clearly very pale at that moment, as if they had just been seriously ill. Danger! Seeing this, Wang Ling hurriedly closed the black box again, and it was only then that everyone felt relieved and relaxed. The radiation from this heavenly hybrid stone was too strong. Don't talk about yourself. Even people at Jingbai and the monk's level of combat strength could feel the pressure. If this was used on Earth, this egg-sized heaven hybrid stone alone could probably kill many cultivators on Earth. So if Wang Ming wanted to study the heavenly hybrid stone next, He would probably have to start with this black box that blocked its radiation. Given Wang Ming's ability, he felt that he could definitely do it. At this moment, in the inner world, Peng Shiren's aura had completely disappeared. They were free from the shackles of the inner world. The monk frowned, feeling vaguely uncomfortable. Does Ling Zhenren also feel it? Wang Ling nodded. The golden lamp had always been sensitive. This was especially true when it came to speculations about fate. He felt that Bai would suffer a calamity if he returned with Peng Shiren this time. While he was injured, he had also lost 2 chaos weapons that could be used to save his life. This is the weakest moment of the present. Peng Shiren himself certainly did not expect that his master's Dharma aspect life form would still exist independently after his master had disappeared for so long. In terms of battle prowess, Peng Shiren was definitely no match for Danglong. But now that he was injured, it was hard to say. This was because Peng Shiren still had the grave goddess. Wang Ling had never been a busybody. But it was just as the monk had said. The existence of Hui was actually necessary. At this thought, he took a few steps forward and looked at the mess on the ground. The primal chaos armor and the black armor had been completely cut into pieces. These fragments were quietly embedded in the ground of the inner plane, like withered black rose petals, exuding the light before they completely withered. Some golden paper scraps scattered around these fragments were the mess left behind by Jingbai's shredding of the corpse wrapping picture. These 2 chaos weapons were of utmost importance to Bai. Now that they had been destroyed, Bai's cultivation would be greatly damaged. At that moment, Wang Ling's king's eye was dyed gold. The 8 characters spell was activated at that moment. The 3 golden lotuses in his eyes turned clockwise, and powerful eye power overflowed to cover the mess in front of him. The monk was stupefied. This was the first time he had seen Wang Ling use this kind of technique. What astonished him even more was the eye technique itself. Existence and non-existence, reality and illusion coexist. It could actually turn reality into illusion, and illusion into reality. Was this still a human ability? The monk's mouth dropped open in astonishment. This eye technique could put a person in an invincible position. Previously, Wang Ling had chosen to keep a low profile, and had never used it in front of the monk. Now Monk Jin Deng was astonished. Very quickly, with the use of his eye power, the chaos armor and the corpse wrapping picture were repaired. Wang Ling gave the chaos armor to the monk to deal with. The monk was familiar with Bai, so he would be able to find out Bai's whereabouts this time. Repairing chaos weapons wasn't Wang Ling's job. It could only be considered a small gift from Bai, after he voluntarily handed over the heavenly hybrid stone. As for the corpse wrapping picture, Wang Ling needed to study it for a while. As Bai had said before, this supreme corpse wrapping picture contained many of the ancient experts who had been suppressed back then. Wang Ling felt that he might have a way to communicate with these ancient experts, and thus further understand the secrets of the ancient era. Don't worry, Ling Zhenren. I'll do it right away. After accepting the chaos armor, Jin Deng was deeply aware of its power, so in the next second he took a step forward. His entire body directly disappeared from the inner world. He should be able to catch up, right? Wang Ling pondered this. Looking at the mess in the inner world, he sighed silently in his heart, and then returned to reality. Although the battle just now seemed to have gone on for a long time, there was still a difference in the flow of time between the inner world and reality. In fact, in reality, Wang Ling had just been in a daze. About 10 minutes later, Wang Ling calmly put his hands in his trouser pockets and stepped out of the secret room almost at the same time as Lotus Sunday. He had deliberately timed it so that he didn't appear to be too early in the challenge. But he hadn't expected that Lotus Sun's idea would actually be the same as his. And even their timing was surprisingly the same. Seeing Lotus Sun nod at him, Wang Ling was about to walk over. In the end, he was intercepted by another girl on the way. This person was none other than Matsushita Shingha, who had been possessed by Peng Shiren. Wang Ling had saved him back then, and before he left he hadn't forgotten to add an illusion spell to tamper with Matsushita Shingha's memory. Matsushita Shingha and Lotus Sun, who was playing Ryoko Q, had been at loggerheads before the start of the competition. When the 2 women appeared in the same scene, They attracted a lot of attention. Everyone thought that Matsushita Shingha was going to declare war on Lotus-san, who was playing Ryoko-kyu. In the end, at that moment, the girl blushed as she grabbed Lotus-san's hand and said shyly and a little domineeringly, "Classmate Ryoko-kyu, I like you." Lotus-san. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand. He really hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Chapter 1541. The sudden confession caught Lotus-san off guard. She did not know what had happened to cause Matsushita Galaxy's attitude towards her to undergo such a drastic change. However, Matsushita Galaxy's serious expression made her feel at a loss as to what to do. Although she had been trying her best to play the role of Ryoko Kumiya, she had never thought of finding a girlfriend for Ryoko Kumiya. If Senior Ajwa found out about this, that would be terrible in this situation. Lotus-san felt that it was better for her to directly refuse. Compared to Matsushita Galaxy liking her, she felt that it was better for the girl in front of her to continue hating her. After careful consideration, she imitated Kamiya Ryoko and pulled away Matsushita Galaxy's hand from her arm. She then turned her head and snorted, "Matsushita Galaxy, I don't like girls. It's impossible between us." In the end, it was one thing for Matsushita Galaxy to not say it out loud. After he said it, he was as happy as a lotus. "Ah, thank you, Ryoko Kamiya. I will do my best." Lotus-san. Matsushita Galaxy was genuinely happy. This happiness was not feigned. Everyone knew that Kamiya Ryoko was at Tsundere. Even if he liked something, he wouldn't express it. The more they liked someone, the more they would hide their feelings behind their hatred. Then he was directly rejected. Isn't that what Kamiya Ryoko means? On the side, Wang Ling marveled at such mystical logic. While Matsushita Galaxy was still pestering Lotus-san, he quietly returned to the waiting room with his hands in his pockets. Wang Ling felt that it was better not to get involved in a battle between girls. Moreover, Matsushita Shingha liked Ryoko Kamiya, so what did that have to do with Lotus-san? Given Lotus-san's intelligence, Wang Ling felt that she would definitely be able to escape successfully in the end. After the secret room escape was divided into groups. In the end, the 16 people who took the shortest time successfully advanced. Wang Ling, Lotus-san and Matsushita Galaxy were all on the list. In the waiting room, Matsushita Galaxy sat next to Lotus-san, gazing at her lovingly. Lotus-san put her hand to her forehead. He didn't expect things to develop to this point. In a moment of desperation, she forgot that Kamiya Ryoko also had this Tsundere attribute. She shouldn't have said humph when she refused. But he didn't expect that he would pay the wrong price in the end. She wanted Songsha Galaxy to think that he had feelings for her. But given the current situation, Lotus-san felt that she should focus on the bigger picture. If he tried to explain too much, he might expose himself. He might as well beat her at her own game, and let the misunderstanding continue. Before leaving Sun Island, she would think of a way to explain things to Matsushita Galaxy. On the other hand, when the top 16 of Jiudao and high school were announced, in the mansion of the Jiogong family, many people who heard the news could not help but be tempted. This Yoshiko is back? How is that possible? Hideshi Komiya almost choked on his own saliva when he heard the news. Miss Yoshiko has indeed returned. The one-eyed warrior replied. In fact, he also felt very strange about this. He ordered his 3 most profitable subordinates, 1 circle, 2nd circle, and 3rd circle, to investigate this matter. Sure enough, they found information on Jiogong Yoshiko's application for a return boat, which confirmed that she had come back on a private immortal boat. Furthermore, the one-eyed warrior had already verified this information, so it definitely wasn't fake. This wasn't the first time Wang Ming had dealt with the matter of altering information. To Wang Ming, this information was nothing more than a string of data. Furthermore, he had already subdued the Mahjong trio on Sun Island, so all the clues were connected, and there was no way to find any mistakes in it in a short period of time. Neither Hideshi Komiya nor this one-eyed warrior would have expected this. It had only been a few days since the people from number 60 high school arrived on Sun Island, but they had already subdued their most trusted subordinates. Why would Yoshiko come back at this time? Just to participate in the competition? In his wheelchair, Hideshi Kwamiya frowned. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Don't tell me she pretended to be here to participate in the competition, but actually came here specifically to snitch on father about the riot in the ghost book. Miss Yoshiko doesn't seem like the type to snitch. Besides, she actually doesn't have direct evidence of the riot in the replica ghost book. The one-eyed warrior said. Without absolute certainty, Miss Yoshiko would never alarm the master. But why on earth did she choose to come back at this time? Hideshi Kwamiya narrowed his eyes. Is it possible that she's pretending? The one-eyed warrior frowned. Actually, it wasn't that he hadn't suspected the possibility of it being a disguise. But all the evidence now pointed to the fact that the person in Jiodao High School was Yoshiko Kwamiya. On one hand, the student registration information had come back. On the other hand, the students around them didn't seem to have noticed anything unusual. In fact, the one-eyed warrior had planted an informant in Jiodao High School. I planted an informant among Jiodao High School students, and he believes that this person is without a doubt Yoshiko Kwamiya, said the one-eyed warrior. Hideshi Kwamiya nodded. I know you've planted someone among Jiodao High School students, but you never told me who it was. Do you remember the Matsushita family? You mean the family that sells electronic spirit beasts? Hideshi Kwamiya's eyes lit up. The Matsushita family's electronic spirit beasts enjoyed a certain reputation around the world. They didn't need to be fed, and they only needed to provide a spirit stone to last for a long time. There were electronic spirit beasts for home use, and there were also electronic spirit beasts for combat. However, due to mechanical limitations, the average combat strength of electronic spirit beasts wasn't too high. The strongest combat model was only at the golden core stage. There was still a lot of room for improvement in the future. If the material problem could be solved, the Matsushita family's electronic spirit beasts would most likely enter the cultivation arms industry. As for why Hideshi Kwamiya was so familiar with the Matsushita family, the reason was very simple. Because the Kwamiya family had always viewed the Matsushita family as a competitor. The hegemony of Sun Island was currently held by the Kwamiya family. But could they sit there for a long time? In fact, it still depended on the efforts of the younger generation. Someone from the Matsushita family is actually your informant? That second Miss, Matsushita Galaxy. She's my disciple. When did you take in such a disciple? Hideshi Kwamiya was shocked. A disciple in the game, said the one-eyed warrior. I met her in Swordnet 33. Hideshi Kwamiya looked incredulous. I remember that this Matsushita Galaxy is also in the top 16 this time. Yes. The one-eyed warrior nodded. My disciple has always regarded Ryoko Kwamiya as his target, and has done some research on her. I definitely won't make a mistake. A person who was supposed to be in Huashio Nation had suddenly and soundlessly appeared on Sun Island. Furthermore, everything had been flawless without the slightest mistake. Hideshi Kwamiya felt like he had seen a ghost. The truth was that the people in the Jiogong family felt like they had seen a ghost. Hideshi Kwamiya wasn't the only one. Chapter 1542. It was now the wee hours of Friday, December 18th. However, in order to select a 5-member delegation as soon as possible, Kyoto still chose to hold the competition overnight. It wasn't a big deal for a cultivator to cultivate for several months without sleep. At most, they would just go bald. For ordinary people, staying up late wasn't something they could endure. It could lead to kidney deficiency, night sweats, fatigue, poor mental state, poor memory, high blood pressure, and so on. What are you looking at? I'm talking to you. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were waiting in the waiting room, and Matsushita Galaxy was very attentive next to them. Classmate Ryoko, are you hungry? Do you want a midnight snack? Midnight snack? Lotus Sun was blank. Losing weight was a girl's lifelong career. And something as evil as midnight snacks had always been a girl's natural enemy. The main thing was that Lotus Sun herself was convinced that Wang Ling didn't like chubby girls, so maintaining a good figure was very important. Of course, There were times when Lotus Sun also hoped that her fat content could go up a little, but that her basic figure could remain the same. Let the fat go where it should go. Maybe this was what every girl wanted to do. Lotus Sun thought in her heart. Actually, she was quite satisfied with her situation so far. At the very least, compared with Ryoko Q, she suddenly felt a little heavier. That's right. I know a 24-hour fishball shop next to the school. It's really delicious. And it's stuffed with papaya cheese. No need, classmate Matsushita Galaxy. Lotus Sun refused. All right. I'll go prepare a midnight snack. Classmate Ryoko, you don't have to be so polite with me. Matsushita Galaxy smiled, as if he was looking at a lover. Saying this, she hurriedly took out her phone, as if calling for a servant to buy it for her. The truth was that Wang Ming had sent Matsushita Galaxy's information to Lotus Sun and Wang Ling a few minutes ago. They now knew that this Matsushita Galaxy in front of them was also a young lady. Although she was the second oldest in the family, she was deeply loved by the head of the Matsushita family. Furthermore, the Matsushita family and the Ryoko family were currently competitors. After hearing this news, Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. She instantly felt like she was looking up at the starry sky. What had she done? She had actually helped classmate Ryoko Q conquer the second young lady of the rival family. At this moment, Lotus Sun's mood was extremely complicated. She tried her best to show that she was resisting. The main reason was to tell Wang Ling, actually, he wasn't from that faction. She was thinking of the bigger picture, not the bigger picture. At this time, Matsushita Galaxy, who was giving her a headache, walked over and looked at her with a doting expression. Ryoko-san, are you thirsty? Do you want me to order some milk tea? This time Lotus Sun's reply became more cautious. If he refused again at this time, she felt that Matsushita Galaxy would do the opposite. So why not just agree and give it a try? Lotus Sun imitated Ryoko's tone and said, "Then, I'll have a small cup." Matsushita Galaxy became even more excited. "Ah, Yoshiko. You actually agreed to my request so honestly. I knew it. My efforts will definitely be reciprocated." Lotus Sun was momentarily speechless. Then, she saw Matsushita Galaxy taking out his mobile phone and ordering his servants around. "Yes, it's me again. Now, I want you to go to the nearest ranch and pick out a cow. That's right. It's best if you bring the cow directly to school. Ryoko-san wants to drink milk tea." "That's right. Apart from the cow, get me a milk tea master. It has to be the best. It doesn't matter how expensive it is." "What? Can't find a master? What are you doing? Don't we have so many electronic spirit beasts at home? If I remember correctly, don't we all have information on the owner of the electronic spirit beast?" Matsushita Galaxy said. "That's right. What I mean is for you to connect to the electronic spirit beast remotely and have it bring the milk tea master here." Student Matsushita Galaxy, "I think I won't drink this milk tea." Lotus Sun was really scared. Even she had never heard of drinking milk tea in this way. It was too hardcore. "Ah, Ryoko-san, don't be polite with me. We're going to be a loving family in the future." Chirp. Matsushita Galaxy acted cute. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun. After about half an hour, all the contestants were in position. The final round of 16 was about to begin. This was already the final battle. Leek Saki directly read out the rules of the competition through the central broadcasting room. Next, the contestants would be divided into two groups for an 8v8 battle royale. The entire process would be carried out using a point system. The 5 people on the winning side with the highest contribution points would be the members of the 5-member delegation this time. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were on the red side. Wang Ling wasn't familiar with most of the people in his team. The only one he was familiar with was the rather annoying peacock. Matsushita Galaxy, on the other hand, was on the blue side. Lotus Sun breathed a slight sigh of relief. As long as they won the next round, Matsushita Galaxy wouldn't interfere with the rest of the competition. In the blink of an eye, Lotus Sun was on the opposite side of Matsushita Galaxy. Wang Ling had thought that Matsushita Galaxy would definitely be in a bad mood. In the end, it was the opposite. She actually looked very happy. Even when she went on stage, she cupped her face and looked at Lotus-san with an intoxicated expression. Ah. I knew I wouldn't be on the same team as Ryoko-san. I'm on the blue team, you're on the red team. Isn't there a saying that since ancient times, red and blue make up? Lotus-san took a deep breath and asked curiously, what if I was on the same team as you? Then we'd be a match made in heaven. Matsushita Galaxy smiled. Hearing this, Lotus-san couldn't help shuddering. As the saying went, everything had its vanquisher. Until today, it seemed that Lotus-san had finally discovered the biggest nemesis in her life. Coup! The warning sounded as the match began. The competition officially began in the gymnasium of Kiwa High School. Wang Ling was waiting solemnly. Although he had already peeled off the single-use talismans and put them back on, he still had to carefully control his strength. The worst thing to do in a chaotic situation was to bump into something. It wasn't that Wang Ling was afraid of hurting himself. It was that he was afraid of accidentally killing someone. Nine Tails mode. With Matsushita Galaxy's delicate shout, the girl swiftly pulled her hair into 9 ponytails. Stimulated by the acupuncture points on his scalp, Matsushita Galaxy's aura soared. His battle strength soared. As expected of the blue team's main fighting force. I didn't expect student Matsushita Galaxy to be so serious from the start. It looks like he really wants to represent the school in the competition. In the central control room, Leek Sasaki marveled repeatedly, because he rarely saw it. Matsushita Galaxy was in Nine Tails mode. Lotus-san frowned slightly at this scene. Everyone thought that this would be a white-hot match. But to everyone's surprise, less than a minute after the match began, there was a series of screams from the blue team. Student Matsushita Galaxy, what are you doing? I'm your teammate. I know. I'm your teammate. You won't get points for hitting me. And we'll all get points deducted. I know. I'm hitting you guys. In the huge gymnasium, Matsushita Galaxy was like a little leopard as he chased after the other 7 members of the blue team. As he ran, he shouted, Ryokoko-chan is going to the competition. I'm protecting her. Wang Ling and Lotus-san. Chapter 1543. Girls who fell in love were terrifying. In the gym, Wang Ling directly experienced the power of generating electricity with love. In Nine Tails mode, Matsushita Galaxy was like a god of death on the battlefield. In the central control room, Leek Sasaki was dumbfounded. The situation in front of him was completely unexpected. He hadn't expected this at all. At that moment, the people on the blue team didn't know whether to fight back or not. If they fought back, they would be attacking their teammates, which would only worsen the situation. Matsushita Galaxy was chasing 7 people on his own, and his points were already being deducted. It had only been a few minutes since the start of the game, but he had already lost dozens of points. If they fought back, the negative points would only increase. No, we have to fight back. After being chased for a while, the 7 people finally decided to grit their teeth and work together to send Matsushita Galaxy away first. As long as this crazy woman was on the team, there was no way they could win. Although Matsushita Galaxy was the main force, she was too much of a hindrance now. It would be better to send her away first, and then think of a way to earn back their points. What a crazy woman. Someone on the blue team angrily rebuked Matsushita Galaxy for beating up a teammate. It was a boy whose clothes had been torn to shreds by Matsushita Galaxy, and he had been hit in the chest with a palm. It made his blood boil. It was like watching a TV show about a green tea bitch seducing a scumbag. The boy remembered that his mother had been watching this show for the last few nights, and he had watched it with her, often feeling so angry that blood clogged his heart. Now he had been hit in the chest by Matsushita Galaxy in Nine Tails mode. Under this pincer attack, the boy finally couldn't take it anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. At that very moment, the situation was already hopeless. Classmate Jie Xiandai, wake up. The remaining people on the blue team shouted. Unfortunately, the boy who had fainted after spitting out blood had already fainted. The referee immediately flew to the boy's side, released a healing spray, and carried him away. This meant that this classmate called Jie Xiandai had been completely defeated. The blue team had originally wanted to work together with the 7 of them to deal with Matsushita Galaxy. But now that one of them had been directly eliminated, they couldn't guarantee their combat strength. On the other hand, Matsushita Galaxy looked like a devil with her 9 ponytails fluttering in the wind. This kind of acupoint piercing technique is actually very harmful to the body. I didn't expect Matsushita Galaxy to do so much for student Yoshiko. A youngster holding a small fan walked out from the side. On the red side were the students from class S2. He was wearing a kendo robe with his name hanging on his chest. Big Wild Ball Maple. Wang Ling had just taken a glance out of the corner of his eye. On the other side, Wang Ming sent Wang Ling detailed information on the person in front of him. In fact, in this situation where the red team was the winner by default, Wang Ming's side had actually already calculated based on the winning percentages that apart from Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, the remaining 5 people could squeeze into the delegation. The wild maple in front of him was one of them. The young man looked like he was watching a show. His fair face was still childish, and there was a birthmark in the shape of a maple leaf between his eyebrows. It was said that this was the origin of the name of the wild group Maple. The 9 Paths and high school kendo team were famous around the world. They were the main force that exported talents to the national team. And the wild maple was the next leader of the 9 Paths and high school kendo team. In terms of strength in all aspects, wild maple was indeed the cream of the crop of the younger generation. He was also a genius-level figure. But compared with Wang Ling, he was still lacking by more than 100 million points. I don't know what student Yoshiko is hesitating about. Student Matsushita Galaxy is such a good girl. Marry her. At that moment, the youngster smiled lightly on the side. He looked at the blue team in front of him, which had already entered the white-hot stage of the Civil War, and his heart was at ease. Who would have thought that the final qualifier would go on so effortlessly? Lotus Sun frowned and said helplessly, "But I don't like girls." "Don't. If student Matsushita Galaxy hears this, she will be very sad." At that moment, Wild Maple stared ahead as if he had sensed something. On the blue team, the remaining 6 people who were locked in a fierce battle with Matsushita Galaxy turned deathly pale, because of Matsushita Galaxy's surging aura. They were extremely shocked. They had thought that 9 Tails mode was already Matsushita Galaxy's limit, and had never expected his aura to actually rise again. 10 Tails, huh? The people on the blue team were stunned. They actually had no idea why Matsushita Galaxy would be willing to go to this extent. In order to be selected as the representative team this time, Matsushita Galaxy had specially cultivated this ultimate move, and had planned to use it in the competition against the other schools. Even she herself had never thought that she would be able to use it in this kind of situation. But for classmate Kamiya Ryoko, it was all worth it. When Matsushita Shingi revealed his hidden trump card, the crowd was stunned. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had the same premonition in their hearts. The blue team's defeat was certain. With this kind of aura, Matsushita Galaxy would have no problem beating up the other blue team members. But this way Matsushita Galaxy would also be injured. Why on earth did he have to do this? Lotus Sun felt that she couldn't wait until they left the island to lay her cards on the table. Matsushita Galaxy was too crazy. She felt that it was better for her to explain the situation earlier. At that moment, Wang Ling stared thoughtfully at the anxious girl next to him. To be honest, Wang Ling hadn't expected things to develop to this point. The main thing was that he himself hadn't expected Matsushita Galaxy, who was in love, to suffer such a severe blow to her intelligence. But when all was said and done, this was all because of him. It was better for him to solve it. The main thing was that this was the first time Wang Ling had seen this girl, who had always been extremely quick-witted, actually show such a helpless expression next to him. For a moment, he felt a little apologetic. When Matsushita Galaxy and the other 6 people on the blue team perished together, Wang Ling secretly crooked his finger, and an invisible spirit light shot out at a speed invisible to the naked eye. After all this was done, Wang Ling's heart, which had been hanging in the air, felt a lot more at ease. This competition is too boring. Wild Team Maple put away his small fan and stared at the people on the red team with a smile. I think we shouldn't do anything. It's better to preserve our strength and win glory for our school. Now that the blue team has been eliminated, we've been watching from the sidelines and haven't made a move yet, so we have 0 points. Wild Team Maple said. Also, it doesn't seem appropriate to make a move in this situation, because the 8 of us are a team to begin with. Whoever makes a move on a teammate will have their points deducted and won't be qualified to go. After saying this, Wild Team Maple gave Wang Ling a meaningful look. To be honest, he didn't really want Wang Ling to go. This was a competition between their 9 paths and a high school. Why would they let an exchange student from another school interfere? What do you want to do? Peacock asked on the side. That's simple. We'll take turns throwing the dice. The person with the most points will go. At that moment, Wild Team Maple gave a meaningful smile. As he spoke, he took out a simple table, 3 dice, and a dice cup from his storage bag. As a player who frequented bars, this was practically a common item for Wild Team Maple. This depends too much on luck. I don't know how to do it. A boy called Hattori Kwanja frowned. It's fine. If you don't know, I can help you. As long as you trust me. Wild Team Maple said. In any case, it's all about luck. Do you want to gamble? Then let's do it, Hattori Kwanja said dubiously. In any case, it was all about luck. Okay. Wild Team Maple smiled. He skillfully placed the dice into the dice clock, and the crisp sound of the dice colliding rang out. The results were out. 5, 6, 6. Hattori Kwanja's eyes lit up. The others on the side also had incredulous expressions on their faces. The highest of the 3 dice was 18 points. Wild Team Maple's Hattori Kwanja had thrown 17 points in one go, which was already an extremely high number. Since you trust me, of course I won't let you down. Wild Team Maple smiled. Is there anyone else? Do you want me to do it? Saying this, he started to shake the dice again and looked at Lotus Sunday this time. I'll be helping classmate Jamiya. If the number is low, it's mine, and if it's high, it's classmate Jamiya's. Lotus Sun didn't even have time to refuse when the dice cup was already settled. Wild Team Maple quickly uncovered it. The number in front of him was shockingly an 18-point leopard. If the first time he threw a high number was luck, then the second time, it was skill. Wild Team Maple knew how to control. Brother Day, you're amazing. Can you help me throw it? Me too. The rest of the people followed suit. Of the 8 people, only Wang Ling and Wild Team Maple hadn't thrown their dice yet. Current record of points. The order from highest to lowest was Lotus Sun, 18 points Peacock, 17 points Hattori Kwanja, 17 points Minor Actor 1, 16 points Minor Actor 2, 16 points Minor Actor 3, 16 points. After sorting out everyone's current points, Wild Team Maple also shook out his own. Without a doubt, it was another 18-point leopard. Looking at this scene, Wang Ling already knew what was going on. Wild Team Maple was making things difficult for him and trying to push him out. Lang-san, do you want to do it yourself, or do you want me to help you? Wild Team Maple looked at Wang Ling and smiled. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed deeply in his heart. He hadn't been the god of gamblers for a long time. Why did he have to force him to do it? It was only 18 points. If he did it, the highest he could get was 63 points. Chapter 1544. Even for Wang Ling, getting 63 points was a matter of probability, because he often shook the die too hard and directly turned it into powder. This required a high degree of precision. But now, with so many seals on him, the success rate of this kind of precision operation had greatly increased. For once present, he needed the prize money from this competition. Moreover, under the current circumstances, the best result would be to get more than 18 points. After all, the remaining 3 minor characters didn't even have names. Obviously, the author of the book didn't intend to include them in the story. Langsang looks very nervous. Do you really not need me to do it for you? Maybe if I get 17 points, you can become a member of the delegation. Wild Maple smiled sinisterly. How could Wang Ling not know that there was a knife hidden behind a smile? But he actually didn't take Big Wild Group Maple's malice to heart. He didn't need to argue with the child. Even though he was only a child, actually he had already analyzed it before. Due to the strict hierarchy within the 9 paths and the high school, it created an internal chain of contempt. This actually greatly deepened the xenophobia within the 9 paths and the high school. For Maple, a native of Sun Island, the wild group Sun Island, Wang Ling was actually just a despicable foreigner. In addition, because of the Sun Island High School ranking list, Wang Ling had been in the limelight and had a certain amount of influence among the girls. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they hated Wang Ling to the bone. How could a foreign student steal their limelight? His looks were average, his studies were average, and his height was average. Wasn't it just that his face was a little pale, and he was a little luckier? Why was it that girls liked him so much? Be it the wild group Maple or Peacock who was watching from the sidelines, none of them could figure this out. In fact, regarding the issue of height, Wang Ling had something to say. He didn't really care about his height, because his body could adjust the proportions of every inch of his body. Moreover, for a man, being tall while lying down might be more important than being tall while standing. No need. At that moment he shook his head. With one hand in his trouser pocket, he took the initiative to stretch out the other hand to touch the dice cup, refusing the good intentions of the wild group Maple. The wild group Maple knew about it. Wang Ling had taken the bait. Actually, he had guessed that Wang Ling would definitely do it himself. Therefore, the dice cup and the dice had been specially tampered with. These 2 items were specially made from a special material, and their durability was extremely low. When the dice cup shook, the dice inside the cup kept colliding back and forth. This seemingly normal collision would greatly reduce the die's durability. After a certain number of times, the die would completely shatter. This was the reason why the wild group Maple was kind enough to help everyone throw the dice. The first 7 people, including himself, had all been shaken by him. How many times had the dice collided in the dice cup? Big Wild Maple had calculated it clearly. This was one of the special skills of the wild group Maple. Years of shaking the dice cup had nurtured an excellent hand feel. In addition, he often watched ghostly videos to train his hearing. In a ghostly video played at 32 times the speed, he could clearly hear with his own ears how many times the dice had been stuck, and how many times the clips and audio had been repeated. In fact, in the first 7 rounds of throwing the dice, the wild group Maple had already used his own precise calculations to push the dice's durability to the limit. Now forget shaking the dice cup. Even the slightest vibration would turn these dice into powder in an instant. Langsan, what are you going to do next? At that moment, the wild group Maple crossed his arms and looked like he was watching a good show. The reason why he had chosen to shake the dice cup was actually because Wang Ling had the title of number 60 high school's mascot. Even if he was a mascot, so what? If you were really lucky enough, why don't you roll some dice? The wild group Maple sneered. He could already see the outcome of this gamble. Because the moment Wang Ling opened the dice cup, what awaited everyone definitely wouldn't be dice, but a pile of dice that had turned into snow-white powder. In the central control room, Leek Sasaki looked at the remote image taken by the referee and felt nervous in his heart. Langsan, is he going to be alright? He sighed. He shouldn't have competed with Ono. His family runs a casino. On Sun Island, a casino could be operated legally with a formal business license after being approved by the department. But generally speaking, the conditions for this kind of approval were very strict. If a family could run a casino, they had to have some sort of background. The wild group Maple had grown up in that kind of environment, and he often performed in all kinds of bars. Apart from kendo, the tricks he was most familiar with cards and dice were his most familiar. So that's how it is. A special die made of black dust? On the other side, Wang Ming, who was watching, had already used the electronic eye he always carried with him to scan the dice using a long-range satellite. Although black dust was fragile, it was a high-end decompression and shockproof material. Wang Ming was actually no stranger to it. And now, the wild group Maple was using black dust to make gambling tools. In fact, Wang Ming himself wasn't surprised. Because this was one of Wang Ming's tricks to begin with, because he had often played this trick with Jiayin in the lab. They competed in points. As long as Jiayin had more points than him, he would eat. In the end, because Wang Ming had tampered with the dice, Jiayin hadn't won even once. Brother Heir, what should we do? Should we think of a way to help Lang San? Leek Sasaki was extremely nervous as he watched the scene in the video. No need, he definitely has a way. Wang Ming smiled. He felt that Leek Sasaki was even more nervous than Wang Ling. At that moment, under everyone's gazes, Wang Ling had already started to carefully shake the dice on the table. With this shake, a lot of people knew that something wasn't right. Because when the dice cup had been shaking, the crisp sound of the dice hitting each other hadn't come out at all. Wang Ling had just shaken it a little. After a muffled sound, no matter how much he shook it, there was only dead silence in the dice cup, and not a single sound could be heard. Ha ha ha. The wild group Maple laughed. Lang San is too careless. Why did you use so much force? Did you shake the dice into powder? Is there something wrong with the dice? Hattori Chuanja asked weakly. I was the one who threw the first 7 times. How could there be something wrong with the dice? If there's a problem, I have new dice. Let's not count and do it again? But this time, I'm not going to care about you. The wild group Maple had guessed that someone would question him. So he straightaway used the excuse he had prepared beforehand. Sure enough, after he said this, Hattori Chuanja shrunk his neck and didn't dare say anything else. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed helplessly. He opened the dice cup in front of everyone. Indeed, the dice inside had already turned into white powder. But the wild group Maple couldn't laugh at the scene in front of him at all, because the dice had indeed turned into powder. But the points had been preserved. He didn't know how Wang Ling had been able to pick out each and every one of the dots on the dice with such precision. But the scene in front of him now was exactly this incredible scene. On the snow-white dice powder was a row of exquisite little dots, like a long ellipsis, arranged from left to right, and the number of dots added up. There were 126 of them. Not only had Wang Ling picked out every single dot. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.